Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are above replacement radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I am your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. We have entered the month of August, and well, that can only mean one thing. It means the trade deadline has come and gone, and what a deadline it was. I believe there were 36 trades made on July 31st. Seemed like from like the 1 through 6 o'clock hours, there was a trade happening like every 5 minutes, especially as we got later into that deadline. But yeah, definitely one of the more, maybe not the biggest deadline in terms of the names being dealt, but definitely one of the more chaotic ones, just with the sheer volume of trades that were happening throughout the actual day.
Yeah, and also very much a it was undersold and over delivered.
Yeah.
I was not expecting this much action. I was not expecting some of these names to be traded. For instance, like I think Carlos Correa was probably the biggest name traded. And that was not really on a lot of people's radars. It wasn't necessarily something that was really being widely reported or widely anticipated heading into the trade deadline. And nonetheless, it happened. So it was cool to, see to be kind of pleasantly surprised by the amount of action that was taking place.
To me, the biggest takeaway was just the league attitude on pitching. Every reliever went and none of the starters went. Like out of all of the big name starters that were rumored to have been traded, I feel like the only one that actually went was Merrill Kelly, where like Cease stays in San Diego, Gallen stays in Arizona, the Padres kept Alcantara and Cabrera, the Twins kept Joe Ryan, the Nationals kept Mackenzie Gore. Like it felt like really nobody got a starter other than the Rangers with Merrill Kelly, the Blue Jays with Shane Bieber, but seemingly nobody really was interested in going out and getting a starter. But everyone went out and got a reliever.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. I figured, I think everyone kind of figured that a Cease trade was going to be hard to pull off because the Padres had so much leverage in, feeling like they were going to compete in the postseason. And logically, that is the case. I mean, they're in a playoff spot right now. So, that was going to be hard.
Threatening the division too.
Yeah, it was going to be hard to, pull Cease away from them. But yeah, there were some surprises. There was a report that Joe Ryan was going to go to the Red Sox, and that was, not true. And
there were a couple posts about it.
Yeah, and there surprisingly wasn't. I feel like there wasn't a lot on Gallen. There didn't seem like a lot of activity going on there. That kind of surprised me, especially considering the direction the Diamondbacks seem to be going in. But yeah, it is interesting. It's the future that Brian Kenny predicted, huh? These starters don't mean anything these days.
No, nobody wanted to trade anything for a starter.
Yeah.
A rental starter, a controllable starter, nothing.
Nope.
Although to be fair, I guess the Rangers did give up like a decent amount for Merrill Kelly. I think it was like 3 of their top like 18 prospects or something like that, according to Baseball America.
Yeah, it was one of the more noticeable returns on the market there, even for a guy that they're going to have for 2 months at least for the regular season.
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
I don't know about you, but like other than a select few trades, it didn't feel like the overwhelming sellers market that we usually see at the deadline where everyone's going for something insane. Obviously, there were a couple of those trades where you were really, wowed by the return, but it didn't feel like that happened on like the average trade that happened.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe
that's because most of everyone that was dealt was a rental, but.
Yeah, it might speak to the quality of players being dealt. Like even Correa, who was dealt, he's on a very much a down year, one of the worst years of his career, and also he costs over $30 million a year. So obviously the return on him wasn't going to be anything crazy outside of a salary dump. And yeah, like the top players talked about evidently were not traded. The Ceases and Joe Ryans of the world. So. like I guess Eugenio Suarez, that surprised me how little the Diamondbacks got out of that, um, but they I think it might have spoken to the fact that there weren't really any mega superstars or like top 25 players in the game that were being dealt.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, yeah, Carlos Correa was the biggest name, but it's in terms of, name plus controllability, it was probably the relievers, whether it be Mason Miller or Jhoan Duran, one of those two.
Yeah.
Those are obviously the trades that netted the best uh sellers returns.
Yeah, it definitely seemed that way. Yeah, control was definitely a very valuable asset as Duran, I believe has, 2 years of control after this year, and then Miller is another 4 or 5 years after this year. So obviously that was going to be valuable to whoever was trading for them. But yeah, I mean, so for we've covered technically 6 trade deadlines if you include the August trade deadline of 2020. But
I think they should have kept it July 31st that year.
yeah,
Six games. What do you think? Are you buying or selling?
exactly. But yeah, technically we've covered 6 trade deadlines, but we haven't covered one uh like uh like this one where we're gonna kind of give out letter grades to each team, evaluate how they did and what we think of what they were able to gather from their trade deadline and how they were able to move their organization forward. But yeah, I mean, did you have anything else before we wanted to get into these little grades here?
Yeah, I'll just give a little disclaimer. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I don't know if I'm speaking for you as well, but obviously three days worth of games have happened since the trade deadline, and a lot of narratives can be changed in that time. And I think there are a couple that certainly have. These letter grades are going to be based on how the actual deadline was and not accounting for the games that have since been played.
Yeah,
Um,
100% on
yeah,
that.
so I will not be giving the Yankees an F.
Yeah.
It's just as a disclaimer.
Right. But yeah, so we'll be going by league and division, starting with the AL East. We'll go AL East to West, then NL East to West, and go in order of where these teams are in the standings. So that leads us to the first place team in the AL East, which is the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, so the Blue Jays, the main thing that happened was giving up Cal Steven, one of their higher end pitching prospects, who is 22 years old, for Shane Bieber, who is currently making rehab starts, and also trading for Sir Anthony Dominguez and Louis Varland to up their bullpen, and then also Ty France. Kind of just like nibbling around the edges here and here, but making some light improvements to each aspect of their roster. What were you thinking for this one, Chris?
I gave the Blue Jays an A minus, especially considering like thinking about where they were at. I think a lot of times we see teams that maybe overperformed, have overperformed heading into a deadline, not commit at the trade deadline because this wasn't a position they were expecting to be in necessarily. I think we saw that with the Brewers this year. Whereas with the Blue Jays, they're in first place. I think they, got with them getting multiple bullpen arms and getting Shane Bieber. I think they definitely improved their team. Cal Steven was maybe a stiffer price to pay, but at this point, like you look at the Blue Jays roster and where they're at in their window, they got Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassett, and George Springer nearing the end of their contracts. Bassett and Springer are in the final year, or excuse me, Bassett's in the final year of his contract, with Gausman and Springer only having 1 year left after this. And those are some impact players for them. This is probably the best opportunity they're going to have in terms of, winning a division and maybe going far in the playoffs, because unfortunately, when we thought they were going to win the division, they just never ended up doing that. So I feel like if you're going to commit, now's the time to commit.
I am going with a B on this one, and I definitely echo some of the things that you said. I do like that they, improved all around in some capacity. I would have liked to see them do a little more. When Springer comes back from the IL, and I don't think Santander is at this point, given the updates that we've seen, and even if he does, he's going to be coming off of shoulder inflammation, a 60-day IL stint, and who knows what you get from him there. The last update from July 21st, which was a while ago now, is that he isn't expected to resume swinging a bat for at least a couple more weeks. So we're in August, and as far as we know, Anthony Santander hasn't even begun swinging yet. He's probably not someone you're really factoring in for a potential postseason run at this point. That being said, with Springer coming back, they're going to look at an outfield with Loperfido, Varsho, Springer, Ty France DH. I would like to see them maybe strengthen that a little more. Maybe go out and get like a Luis Robert, even if he's not, particularly good. I'd still like to see them take the chance there. It's not going to cost a whole lot, given how rough his play has been. Maybe a Cedric Mullins as well, something like that. Maybe some more bullpen as well, but that's something you could say for just about any team. Overall, they did a fine job. I felt like there could have been maybe a little bit more done, but overall, I think it's a solid deadline. I'm giving it a B.
Yeah, I think we both feel positively about them. Now we move on to the Boston Red Sox, which it stinks that we have to talk so soon about them, and get the negative energy out of the air. And yeah, by the way, with the Blue Jays, the bullpen arms that they got Louis Varland, and I forget what the Louis Varland and Sir Anthony Dominguez. Those were the two bullpen arms that I like them getting, at least even just for depth. And Louis Varland, I feel like has good potential as well. But the Red Sox, I put them down for an F. I think they failed this one. I think they hardly improved their 2025 roster while setting the organization back for the future. If you had told me that James Tibbs, Zach Earhart, and
Blaze Jordan
would be traded in this deadline, I would have expected a lot better results, a lot better return, and it just didn't happen, unfortunately. Steven Matz, I think he's a good bullpen arm, for sure, but Dustin May, like, if you're going to trade for a starting pitcher, I'd like to have full confidence that they're going to be in the playoff rotation, especially if you're giving up James Tibbs, who on MLB.com was ranked their number 5 prospect. So mind you, James Tibbs also was a first-round draft pick last year and 13th
and
overall.
One of the major pieces from the Devers trade.
Yeah, major piece of the Devers trade. So there's also the hoopla about that. So yeah, like I don't look at the 2025 team much differently than I did before the trade deadline. Also with the Mats addition, like, he is a good reliever, but considering the roster makeup, he wasn't a huge necessity. The Red Sox have good left-handed relievers with Justin Wilson, Brennan Bernardino. I believe they sent down Bernardino to have Mats on the roster, and the upgrade is not huge, in my opinion, and I don't think it's worth Blaze Jordan either. I know Blaze Jordan hasn't necessarily lived up to the hype, but he is also only 22, and I think he had an 872 OPS in the minors this year. So yeah, like, maybe I'm extra hypercritical because it is my team and I was disappointed by them, but I think just it overall set the organization back, and I don't feel much better about the 2025 team than I did, a week ago.
I mostly echo your sentiment. I did give them a D+, so I was a little bit more on the positive side. I think largely the reason why I didn't give them an F is because I thought the Steven Matz edition was fine. It was fine, not good, not great, fine. Obviously, if you were going to trade Blaze Jordan, I would have wished for something more large in the return than Steven Matz on a rental deal, but at the end of the day, Jordan was never going to get an opportunity here, and he's Rule 5 eligible at the end of the year anyway, similar to deals they've made at deadlines past, so they just kind of offload some of their Rule 5 guys that are coming up. That being said, the Dustin May trade was a disgrace to me. Trading James Tibbs and Zach Earhart for 2 months of a guy that isn't particularly good, in my opinion. No disrespect, but Dustin May's obviously suffered a lot of injuries throughout his career. He's gone through a lot. He's back this year. He had never thrown more than 56 innings in any single season at the major league level before this year. He's already at 104 innings, and since crossing that 56 inning threshold, he has a 5.59 ERA and a 5.57 FIP. I don't really know if he fits into your rotation, even with guys like Walker Buehler, guys like Richard. already hold spots that you were probably trying to replace. I don't feel like the rotation got much better. I thought the bullpen got marginally better. I wish there was more done, but I'm giving it a D plus, not an F, because I thought the Mets edition was fine enough to avoid just a total failure from me.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument to be made there. And yeah, like Dustin May, I think I wouldn't have minded this if this was, if the Red Sox next offseason were to have signed him to like a, 1 year, $10 million deal just to see what they could do with him. But to give up, two fairly valuable, not top of the farm system, but fairly valuable prospects for him, to have him around for 2 months. That it seems like this is a guy who I would want if, the pitching development was able to have him for like a full spring training. And this is not a middle of the season move to get Dustin May, in my opinion. So, yeah, it just, I think it was not, it was not a net positive for sure, at least on that deal. But yeah,
But hey, they are 3-0 since the deadline, so I'll give them
yes.
that.
And Dustin May does have a 0 ERA with the Red Sox. So now we move on to the rival Yankees, who I gave an A minus. I think they did a pretty good job in this deadline. They bolstered their bullpen for sure. Added, I think, three good arms.
Yeah.
Bednar, Doval, and who was the other one?
Jake Bird.
Jake Bird. And Bednar and Doval have been prominent closers for a few years now. And also, like, with that, it wasn't like they were necessarily strengthening their strengths. Their bullpen was the worst aspect statistically, of that roster, and they bolstered that, and that really helps them out. It really brings them above whatever their level was before. What the difference between an A minus and an A plus for me would have been if they could have gotten another starter, with Garrett Cole and Clark Schmidt being out long term. I think that could have helped them out. But I can't hold them back. I can't hold them to that too much because Luis Heel is coming off the IL, and he's going to add to that. He's going to add, around the same as a trade acquisition would have. So, I can't hold their feet to the fire too much on that, not adding a starter, because they are adding a starter. It's just from their own organization. So, but yeah, I felt, from a Yankees perspective, I think that was a pretty positive trade deadline.
Yeah, I gave them a B plus, and I echo pretty much most of what you said. They got three controllable relievers. All of them have control beyond this year. They really didn't have to give up anything too crazy to get any of them. So you keep a lot of the important guys in your farm, whether it be Spencer Jones, whether it be George Lombard, Lagrange, some of those guys. Yeah, I also wish they would have gotten another starter. I think the offense is fine, and also they got Ryan McMahon too, even if that was not, at the deadline. That was still part of what they did. But right now, you're looking at a potential playoff rotation of Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, Luis Heel, and one of Cam Schlittler or Will Warren. That's not exactly what I would like to see from this team in October. I feel like we're used to seeing much better from them, and obviously, Cole's hurt, Clark Schmidt's hurt. Like, that doesn't help, but you knew those things going well before the deadline. So I would have liked another starter.
Yeah, right, for sure, for sure. And I guess in defense of Brian Cashman, like if you get three good relievers, you're basically saying like, okay, if we have a good enough bullpen, we don't really need that third starter to go more than, like 12 or 13 batters. We can have a stacked bullpen. But yeah, so on to the Tampa Bay Rays. I they had an interesting.
This was a hard one to grade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also it's hard to be critical of the Rays trading because it feels like they always win for the most part. However, how I see it right now, I saw it as a negative deadline for them. I have it as a D for the Tampa Bay
Ooh.
Rays. Because yeah, I think just organizationally it just didn't make sense for them. They traded Taj Bradley for Griffin Jacks, and Griffin Jacks is an elite reliever. He is, I think, one of the best. I ranked him 10th in my top relievers list this past year. There's a good chance I rank him top 10 again next year. However, I think it's a bit early to give up on Taj Bradley, in my opinion. You know, he's 24 years old. He has two more years of control than Jax, and obviously a starter is going to have much more upside and value than a reliever will. Like Griffin Jax at his most elite, like he's still going to give you maybe 2 wins of a replacement at most in a really, really good season. Whereas Taj Bradley, that would be an average season for him in terms of just overall value. And also Taj Bradley is younger and has more control. Also, I found the Adrian Hauser acquisition fairly confusing. Like he was a good pitcher on the market, but he is a pure rental. And I know the Rays have been trending worse since the trade deadline, but even on July 30, they had a 13% chance of making the playoffs. So I didn't really understand the Adrian Hauser move from their perspective, especially as a team who really relies on seeing the long-term window and, the fact that they can't really get big free agents or make win now trades in the offseason. And they're always kind of, seeking out to extend their window as long as possible. That Hauser addition didn't necessarily make much sense to me, and maybe I have to do more reading on it and get their perspective on it more. But just based on the action of it, I couldn't really see the sense in doing that. And yeah, like I wonder if they were prospect dumping, if they had some like Rule 5 eligible guys that they just wanted to get rid of. But yeah, I think just in terms of how the Rays operate and how they kind of have to operate considering their lack of budget, I don't think it really made sense for them to do what they did. So I have the Rays as a D.
Yeah, I actually had a bit of a different sentiment to this one. They're not rebuilding. It seems like they're kind of retooling for 2026. That's probably what they had in mind for this deadline. For that, I thought they did an all right job, but definitely there was still some confusion. I gave them a B minus, which is probably like the closest thing to an average grade. The fact that they didn't trade Brandon Lau and Pete Fairbanks leads me to believe that they're probably going to pick up both of the club options on those players. Fairbanks has a $7 million option next year. Brandon Lau's is $11.5 million. I would have to imagine if you kept those guys, and I didn't even really see them in many rumors, it would have to mean to me that you obviously plan on taking those options. If they don't, I'm going to definitely start asking some more questions as to what exactly they did. Obviously, Jax is a controllable reliever and he's very good, so I trust whatever they think that they can do with him because that's kind of the impression they've given people over the last few years. The Adrian Hauser thing, I think, was largely just, finding a replacement of the innings thrown by one of Taj Bradley or Zach Littell. It looks like Joe Boyle is going to get more of a chance in the next couple of months. I like that they added Hunter Fiducia as a potential backup catcher. Everyone kept raving about him when he was with the Dodgers, but he just never really got a chance because of Will Smith. So I'm intrigued to see how people, fare in that, and if he gets time, how he does. He is 28 and just making his major league debut, but he has hit pretty well in the minors. He seems good defensively, so I'm excited to see him get some opportunities. If the goal was building for 2026, I thought for the most part they did a pretty good job, and for that reason, I'm giving them a B minus.
Yeah, I found the Rays kind of hard to evaluate.
It is.
And knowing the Rays, it will probably end up positive for them, but just how I see it now, um, I'm waiting on it. But on to our last American League East team, the Baltimore Orioles. I gave them just like the Blue Jays and Yankees, I gave them an A minus. They traded the players that made sense to trade. I think they got a decent return on Sir Anthony Dominguez, and what I also liked is that they didn't overcommit on the sell. I think this year is a little bit of an anomaly for them. I don't think a lot of people would have had them 10 games below 500 at this point in the year. And they were just kind of cursed by a really bad first 2 months of the year. Actually, if you go back to, since or their last 57 games, I believe they're 31-24 or something like that. Like they've been playing good baseball around the time they made the managerial change, and I don't think that's necessarily a causation effect. It's just kind of happenstance, but they have been playing good baseball. I think they are in a position to be competitive this upcoming year. So I don't think trading off any pieces like Henderson or Rutschman would have really made sense, or like diving down to like Jordan Westberg or anything like that. Like they traded the veterans, the guys who, have decent value and not a lot of control left. So I liked that they did that, and I think they kind of did what they had to and did what made sense.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you in every facet there. I also give them an A minus, first team that we've agreed on. Yeah, there's really not much you said that I would add. I really like the return they got from the Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano trade with the Padres. I thought they got a decent just sheer number of people from the system, and also like Boston Bateman is one of their higher ranked prospects. So I'm interested to see if that turns out to be anything for just, a couple of rental hitters. Yeah, they traded everyone that made sense. If I could have added anything, I would have maybe went harder for an Eflin trade or a Gary Sanchez trade, but at the end of the day, that's not a huge deal that they didn't do those, which is why I only bumped it down to an A minus. Yeah, there's really not much else to say there. I think you kind of nailed it there.
Right, right. Appreciate that. But now we go to the American League Central, and maybe we could snake it so that I'm not the first one on
Sure.
everyone. So yeah, where do you have the Tigers at?
Yeah, I was not a huge fan of the Tigers deadline. I gave them a C minus. For context, they added Charlie Morton, Rafael Montero, Paul Sewald, Kyle Finnegan. Like the Blue Jays, just small, refining around the edges there. I would like for them to have done something a little bit bigger. They have one of the best farm systems in the league. And with Tarek Skubal only under contract until 2026, I don't really know how long this window is going to be. Like if Tarek Skubal leaves this team, I think it becomes significantly worse. And they haven't extended him at this point. I don't know how close they've been in negotiations. There's not been a ton of reporting on it that I've seen, but this should be the year that they go out and try to do it. They have the best record in the division by a comfortable amount. They are one of the best teams in the American League. To me, this should be the year to go all in. And they, like I said, have plenty of prospects. I thought they could have easily topped what the Mariners did for the Eugenio Suarez trade. I wish they had done a lot more than just, some small refining here and there. So for that reason, I'm giving them a C minus.
Yeah, I agree with you completely there. I also gave the Tigers a C minus for this trade deadline. And yeah, even as someone who had them winning the American League Central this year, they're drastically overperforming this year, and it would be hard to imagine them repeating this level of success for next year. They have a lot of players that are having career years or career resurgences, like Javier Baez and Gleyber Torres most notably, and that's pushed them into the position that they're in. And as you mentioned, Tarek Skubal only has a year and a half left to control left, and there's not a whole lot of noise on how he's going to get managed, or how they're going to if and how they're going to keep him around. And what I worry about with the Tigers is that their their roster is going to look fairly similar to how it did heading into last postseason. And while the pitching chaos was fun and it was a good story, it's not the most effective way to win baseball games and win playoff series necessarily. They obviously Tarek Skubal at the head of the rotation is great, but Casey Mize has definitely improved, and I'm glad that he's healthy. And Reese Olson has done well, but he's on the IL. They should have, a more firmly established number two or number three. And to get Charlie Morton as the starter that you're going to get, Charlie Morton and Chris Paddock as the starters you're going to get, some guys who maybe I would consider more as innings eaters than, playoff starters, doesn't necessarily make sense to me for a team that's trying to win a World Series. Morton, I think, Morton and Paddock, I think, would be good offseason additions where it's like, okay, they can help out the back of the rotation. They can eat up some innings for us, save the bullpen a little bit. For a playoff series, I don't see how well they're going to do, or how effective they're going to be in that respect. I'd love to have seen them possibly, in the Merrill Kelly sweepstakes, or the, Dylan Cease, Zach Gallen, um, you know, Joe Ryan sweepstakes. I know it's in division, but a more prominent starter than Charlie Morton or Chris Paddock. So So yeah, I think they could have been more aggressive on a starter. I agree that they could have been more aggressive on a Eugenio Suarez. Um, but yeah, they didn't end up doing that. And yeah, if I were a Tigers fan, I'd be a little bit bummed out for sure.
In fairness, I do think the rotation in the playoffs will be significantly better than last year. Like last year, they started Kader Montero in Game 1 against Cleveland.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely.
like
Um,
Flaherty was supposed to be the established number two. He hasn't quite been that this year, but the strikeout to walk numbers are still very good, and I think that's a switch that he's capable of flipping at any time. That's what we saw, with the Dodgers in the postseason last year. But yeah, I still wish they could have gone out and did something bigger. The next team is the Cleveland Guardians, who were relatively quiet at the deadline, but I think it was a rather appropriate quiet. I don't think there's much they could have or should have done. They traded Shane Bieber for Cal Steven, who is a solid pitching prospect, and they traded Paul Sewald for a player to be named later. And I'm giving it an A minus. I don't really know what else I would have done. I think not trading Stephen Kwan was a win for this team. I thought that would have been a mistake if they had done that. Obviously, there were a lot of rumors. Supposedly there were conversations had. Sucks that you couldn't trade Clase. I'm sure that's something they wanted to do, but obviously through no fault of their own, they weren't able to do that as he was placed on leave for a potential gambling scandal. In terms of the impending free agents, it's Carlos Santana, Jacob Junis, Austin Hedges, Lane Thomas. Like there's not really much you can do with all of that. Like Santana is 39. And I wouldn't have really traded much of the controllable guys outside of maybe Class A, but obviously that wasn't going to happen. So I thought they did a fine job at the deadline. They did the things that made sense. They didn't completely sell because I still think that this is a roster that's talented enough to compete in the near future as soon as next year. I mean, we literally saw them, in the LCS last year. So it was an A minus for me from Cleveland. I thought they did all the things that made sense.
yeah, three in a row. We have the same
Mhm.
exact grade. I also have an A minus for the Guardians. Because yeah, I mean, getting what they could out of Shane Bieber, I think is a big win for them. Obviously, Guardians don't have much of a chance to be in the playoff mix this year, and Shane Bieber, I think, only has control left for this year. And yeah, Cal Steven, he has a 2.06 ERA and 2.65 FIP in the minors this year, and he's the number 80 overall prospect on Fangraphs among, all positions, all players, all organizations. He's number 80 overall, according to Fangraphs. So getting that out of someone who, hasn't pitched in a year and a half, I think that's pretty impressive from a Guardians perspective, and knowing how the Guardians operate and how their pitching goes, Cal Steven probably will end up working out for them. So I like that trade, and yeah, I agree. I didn't. There wasn't much missing. There wasn't like an obvious trade that they should have made that they didn't. That's kind of all they really could do. On to the Royals.
Yeah, I mentioned this team's deadline and some things that I was confused about on the last pod, but I actually did like what they did on deadline day. I'm giving them a B. I think it was a fair deadline for them. They obviously were in a bit of a weird spot where you don't really want to sell, given like they just went through a long rebuild. They're having a down year. It is what it is. But they are 3.5 games out of a wild card spot, and they bought on controllable pieces. They got some starting pitchers, even if they're not the biggest names. I think that guys like Bailey Falter, guys like Stephen Kolek, Ryan Bergert, have the potential to be better than what they have been throwing out there on some of the Reagan's non Lugo days. So I thought that was fine. Even if he was a rental and won't be of much help to this team likely after this year, I liked the addition of Mike Yastrzemski. The Royals have comfortably the worst outfield in the league this year. They are at a 56 weighted runs created plus as an outfield unit, -3 FWAR. No one else is below I think -0.1 in the outfield this year. They needed to upgrade there somewhere, and Mike Yastrzemski I think will be better than a -3 win player as an outfielder. So yeah, I thought it was a fair deadline. Like I said, most of the pieces they got are controllable beyond this year. Even if they might not make the biggest impact, it's definitely upgrades all around. So I'm giving the Royals a B.
Yeah, with the Royals, I think part of my evaluation went into just like I didn't really know what direction they should go, and I didn't
Yeah,
really know what the right pieces were. So I guess I just gave them the average grade, which is a C. I just, like, I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. I don't know what to expect with these, additions or subtractions. And I probably thought the least about this team in terms of the trade deadline out of all 30, or at least, bottom three in terms of
Mhm.
thinking about it. So I kind of just gave the generic C grade. I don't really have much to say about the Royals, to be honest.
That's
Um,
fine.
but
But
yeah,
there is a lot to say about our next team.
yes, the Minnesota Twins. What did you think
Um,
about what they did?
yeah, I think this was the hardest team to evaluate 100%. They traded what, 9, 10 players from their major league roster. Um, for me, this deadline was less about what was actually done and more the things that have happened over the last year and a half that led to this point. And I think that drove a lot of how I evaluated this deadline. And for that reason, I'm giving the Twins a C minus. I thought they got some good returns on stuff. If the goal was, hey, if the goal was lower payroll enough to make a potential sale of the team easier, congratulations, you did a great job. Because getting rid of that Correa contract will be helpful for that cause. Maybe it's, I'm sure it's something that Twins fans would be happy to see, should that be the result of this. Um, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I will never uh get on a team that is in one of those like limbo positions where they have to make a decision. They make one and they commit to it. This is a team that was kind of on the fringes of the playoffs. They could have argued for buying. They ultimately chose to sell, and they sold. Like they really, really sold. So I won't knock them for making the decision and sticking to it, because I think that's at the end of the day much better than sitting on the fence or trying to do both. So that's probably why it's not an F for me or a D. That being said, I didn't like the Carlos Correa trade from their perspective. I think if you're going to do that trade, you have to either get a decent return or get all of the money off the table. They did neither of those things. The one prospector they got is a 26-year-old in high A, and they are still paying another 24 million of Correa's remaining salary. And I know that Correa hasn't been good this year. You should have been able to leverage him with the Astros a little bit more. He was the only team that they were the only team that he was willing to go to. They just lost their third baseman, and certainly there's a lot of incentive into bringing him back. They probably believe that he could be better there than he was, and also he was very good last year. He's still relatively young. I thought they should have done much better in that trade. The Duran trade, I thought they did fine. The Brock Stewart trade, you get James Outman for a while. The Griffin Jacks trade, you get a starter. I don't know. It's very difficult to fully evaluate. But overall, like the fact that 2 years ago this team, won its first playoff series in 18 years, and they responded by cutting payroll by like 30, 40 million the next year, uh, and having it lead to this point a year and a half later is very sad and like depressing for me. And I think that's where a lot of my evaluation goes when looking at this trade deadline. So for that, I am giving them a C minus.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I kind of evaluated it more based off of, um, you know, how what their plan was, how they approached it, how they attacked it, and what they ended up with. And it's clear they wanted to sell. And I think they did a good job selling. I actually gave them an A, um,
Fair.
for their efforts at the trade deadline. Because yeah, I think it seems like they want to rebuild. They don't want to be tied to too much money for the future. Now, it's up to them to capitalize on the extra payroll over the next few years, and we know that a lot of the times that does not happen with MLB organizations. However, I do think in this trade deadline, they set the organization up well. They set the organization up well for the future. Eduardo Tate and Micah Bell from the Duran trade are both top 100 prospects, top 100 overall prospects on MLB Pipeline. I know that that's not updated, but as of 4 months ago, they were top 100 prospects on MLB Pipeline. And then Kendry Rojas, I liked from the Louis Varland trade. Kendry Rojas has a 32% strikeout minus walk rate in 41 and a third minor league innings. And then, I didn't like the Griffin Jacks trade from the Rays perspective, but I like it from the Twins perspective, especially if you are rebuilding. You traded for someone more controllable with, I believe, higher upside in Taj Bradley. there's not, a 20, we can't forget about the value of a 24-year-old starter who, um, has shown ability to strike batters out, and just has good overall potential, can throw the ball hard. I think that is very valuable, and the Twins sought that out and got it, and gave up a reliever for him. And yeah, I think they set their organization up well for the future. But yeah, I get from a Twins perspective, they really could have gone either way. They could have stayed put and gone aggressive in the offseason, and tried to build a winning team for next year. But they decided to go all in on the sell, and I think they executed the sell fairly well. But yeah, now moving on to the White Sox.
Yeah, what did they even do? They traded Adrian Hauser.
Yep.
Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Oh, and they traded Austin Slater. I gave the White Sox what did I give them? I gave them a B plus. Yeah, I like I said with the Guardians, I don't really know what else I would have done. They traded all the guys that made sense. Um, they didn't trade Luis Robert Jr., and I think pretty clearly they're not going to take the $20 million player option for him next year. That being said, like, if you want to get on them for not trading Luis Robert, talk about the 2023 trade deadline, talk about the 2023 through 24 offseason. Like, that's when the ship sailed. That's when it made sense to do it. And, it was never going to be better than that going forward. And maybe that's not the fault of the organization. They probably didn't know that he would have a downfall that was that bad. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they did the things that I guess made sense, and for that reason, I gave him a B plus. No, not too much to analyze there.
Yeah, I agree that least one of the teams we have to think least about with this trade deadline. I did not have them at a B plus, but I had them around the same. I had the White Sox at a B for this trade deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did what they had to with Adrian Hauser. Got lucky that he had a low 2 ERA and a FIP in the low threes this year, and lucky they were able to get something out of him. So good for them on that. Maybe this could have been moved up to an A if they got something out of Aaron Savale, because
Yeah.
he's a veteran pitcher who, like, there were worse. I would say there were worse starters that were shipped out in this trade deadline than Aaron Savale. So I think they could have gotten something out of Aaron Savale. So that maybe could have pushed me to an A, but I don't think it was a gigantic failure that they didn't trade Aaron Savale. It's mostly their main job was to get something out of Adrian Hauser. That's what they did. So I guess by the Common Core curriculum, B is meeting the standard. So they met the standard for me on the trade deadline. So yeah, that is it for the AL Central. And I guess I'll start with the AL West to rotate. And for the Astros, they definitely made some noise in this past trade deadline. I think they made some positive moves. I have them at a B plus. And in my opinion, they were a starting pitching acquisition away from an A plus. I think their 3 through 5 in the rotation is their biggest weakness. And unfortunately, as far as I recall, unless I'm missing something, I don't think they addressed it. But even with that, I think they did a lot of productive things. I think they can do a lot with Jesus Sanchez. Jesus Sanchez not only can make an impact for this year, but I believe the next 2 years after this. And then, they didn't really have to give up anything for Carlos Correa. I think they improved their chances for both this year and beyond, which is kind of what their goals have been over the past couple of years in terms of making maybe some retooling moves and maybe trading for more control, more than just trading for this year. So yeah, I like the additions they made. However, I'm kind of worried about their pitching situation in a best of 7 series. If they address that starting pitching, they would have moved up to an A for me. But them not really addressing the starting pitching was kind of the barrier of entry for that A territory. So I give them a B plus.
Completely agree with you. Everything you said was correct. I give him a B minus. I
Mhm.
see not addressing the starting pitching as a much more glaring thing than I think you did. Because it's Framber, Hunter Brown, and then what? Christian Javier is making rehab starts. Luis Garcia is making rehab starts. Spencer Arrighetti is making rehab starts. So they will have guys back, but what are they going to be? Like you don't know. You can't put anything. You can't be confident in anything. I know that they're bringing back all the classics from 2022 with Garcia and Javier, but you just cannot rely on those guys to be making big starts just a couple months away, removed from coming back from major surgeries. Arrighetti, same thing. He's only in his second season in the majors. But I mean, the team still did a lot of good stuff. I liked the Correa trade, even if he's on a down year. I still think he is capable of just like on the nature of coming back to Houston, like doing better, just on that front. They're moving over to third base, but also like they kind of set their 2026 lineup in place, right? With Jordan ideally coming back next year, with Rizak Paredes coming back next year, like you're looking at you can pretty much already envision the exact 2026 lineup with, Diaz catching, Walker at first, probably Altuve, or no, probably like Pena at short, Correa at third. What did I texted our group chat and I forget what I said for like second base specifically.
Paredes at second base.
Yeah, Paredes at second base. I'm looking at the lineup and he's not there. Jordan, Sanchez, Cam Smith in the outfield, and then Altuve DH. Like you can lock that in, and that's a lineup that's competing for a championship. You pretty much set everything in stone. You need to address your pitching this offseason with Framber a free agent to be. But yeah, I mean, this sets them up very nicely for 2025. Outside of the pitching, which I think it definitely doesn't do that, but definitely beyond this year. So I give them a B- because I really didn't like the not addressing the pitching, starting pitching in particular.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, you're kind of banking with Javier Garcia, and I think Arrighetti. You're kind of banking on like some lottery tickets in there, hoping that they can just come back and be peak form. And yeah, it would, as a Christian Javier truther, I would love to see him come back and pitch like it's 2022 again. But I can't, you can't bank on that happening necessarily. On to the Seattle Mariners, who, I only gave the grade to one team and I'm giving it to the Mariners. I gave them an A+ for this trade deadline. They drastically improved their lineup and they also acknowledged their bullpen with the Caleb Ferguson addition. I think acknowledging their bullpen was important because at least as of yesterday, their bullpen FIP was 15th in baseball. So, we know the Mariners for their pitching, but bullpen hasn't been as up to par as it normally is. The Caleb Ferguson addition definitely helps with that. He's been a pretty good reliever this year. Also with the Mariners going full buy, they kept pretty much, most of their valuable assets in their farm system. They didn't really set their organization back for the future to buy in for this year, in my opinion. And also just maybe from a more narrative sense, it was refreshing to see the Mariners be more aggressive after it feels like they've been retooling forever. It feels like with every positive, with every win now move, they make a, more longer term move. With every, free agent, they make a move to cut payroll. It seems like they've kind of been doing this push pull thing forever. There was none of that this time. They're fully bought in for a playoff run and for the 2025 playoffs if and when they make it there.
Yeah, I pretty much am in lockstep with you on all of that. I am clearly a bit of a stricter judge, though. I didn't give any A+, but I did give one A, and it went to this team. The Seattle Mariners got, I think, the two best bats that were traded at this deadline between, of course, Eugenio Suarez and Josh Naylor, who we talked about on last episode. The price for Suarez was definitely a lot less than I thought it would have been. What I came on here and said last show was, as long as the Mariners want Eugenio Suarez, they got him. Maybe the Tigers may have to push him up a little bit, but I still think the Mariners are the team that, can absolutely get him if they want him. And that's what they went out and did, but I didn't think it would take just, Tyler Locklear and Juan Burgess and everyone else that they gave up in that deal. I thought it would be a lot more than that. And for that reason, I like the deadline even more. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much echo everything you said. I wouldn't have really changed much at all. If I'm being nitpicky, maybe get another reliever, but really, I mean, this is exactly what you wanted this team to do. I'm excited. I need to see this team in the playoffs. I need to see it. This team is the team that you wouldn't want to run into on October if they get hot at the right time. And they got all the pieces to do that. The offense has been, filled up as much as you possibly can fill it up. The pitching is obviously what we know it to be. The bullpen's been solid. There's a very good back end with, Edward Bizardo and Dave Spire having broken out a lot this year. Same with Carlos Vargas on top of, Brash and Munoz being the established guys there. But yeah, they nailed it. I'm giving them an A.
Yeah, right, absolutely. So yeah, both positive on the Mariners. And on to the Rangers, who are standings wise fairly close to the Mariners. I gave the Rangers a B for this trade deadline. How I saw it, they kind of strengthened their strengths. They got good pitching when they already had good pitching. Like pitching has been their strength this year, whether that be starting or in the bullpen. I think they definitely could have used some lineup help. They have the fifth, or at least as of yesterday, when I was writing these notes, they had the fifth lowest weighted runs created plus in baseball last year, and that's park adjusted. I know their park stat, the Globe Life Field park stats are pretty, pro pitching, anti-hitting, but even with that, they still have the fifth lowest weighted runs created plus in baseball, at least as of yesterday. But you know, even if they even if they didn't necessarily fill holes, they did make their team better as a whole. So in my opinion, I can't really be too critical of that. Um, if you make your pitching better or make your hitting better, you're still making your team better. So I think that's what they did with Merrill Kelly, and then the other relievers that they got. I need to refresh myself on. Yeah, they got Danny Kowloon, Phil Maton. I think those are the
That's
main
it.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kowloon, Maton, and Kelly. That definitely improves their team. Not necessarily, filling holes, but did make their team better. So that's why I give them a B.
I'm right there with you. I also gave them a B. Yeah, shout out to them for actually going out and getting a starter. No one really did that except for them and basically the Blue Jays, but they got the best starter that was traded this year in Merrill Kelly. So props to them for getting that done. I know it did take a lot, but someone needed to do it, and they're the team that stepped up and said, "All right, we will take a rental starter that we expect to make an impact," and good on them for it. I would like to have seen them done more to the lineup. Like you needed to replace Jock Peterson's production. He's not been hitting well at all this year. You needed to find someone else. That name was Rowdy Tellez, um, who they got a couple weeks ago. Still not exactly who I would have liked. There were better names out there. I mentioned Marcelo Zuna on the last podcast. That should have happened, and I stand by it. But yeah, I think you needed to do more to address the offense, particularly at the DH spot, and that was just not something that was done. So I can't really give them much more than a B for that. But I am giving them B. It was a solid deadline, and I like the Merrill Kelly addition a lot.
Yeah. So now we move on to the Angels, who I don't think had, like, I will say I don't think they had much responsibility in this trade deadline. They didn't have
No,
crazy valuable pieces,
and
but
yet,
what they chose to do did confuse me. So I gave them an F for this deadline.
fair.
But in my opinion, it's, the difference between, like, it's like failing, but failing a 10-point quiz like in a class as opposed to an exam. Like, I think the Red Sox did poorly on an exam, whereas the Angels did poorly on a quiz. Like, this wasn't a huge
Yeah.
deadline for them. But I did give them an F nonetheless. I think they, so with a 3% chance to make the playoffs in July 30, they traded controllable players for rental relievers in their mid to late 30s. And in my opinion, like, there's no excuse for Kenley Jansen to be on this team right now.
He
He's
said he wanted to be there, so
Well, okay. Well, does he have an? Yeah, I'm sure
so
that
that's it. Their hands are tied there.
I'm sure his $10 million deal also has a no trade clause. So that was never reported, but but yeah. So Kenley Jansen, like, he's a good reliever, and guys like Sir Anthony Dominguez got good returns. I think the Angels could have capitalized on a Kenley Jansen market, and they did not. He's whatever 37 or 38. He's had a good year. He's there for just this year, at least on contract. Um, yeah, you could have like very easily not only could have gotten something out of him, should have gotten something out of him, did not. Yeah, very confusing deadline, but it wasn't, they didn't come, they fumbled, but it wasn't, they didn't fumble their fumble is not a crazy big deal. Um, like, it wasn't a high leverage trade deadline for them. They didn't have a crazy responsibility. So it's not that big of a deal. It's just like, come on, guys, you could have done better. Where did you have the Angels at?
Yeah, I'm giving them a D. They are what, 5.5 games out of a wild card spot, and they were probably closer on Thursday because they lost 2 out of 3 to the White Sox this weekend. Like again, like if you are one of those teams that is on the fence on whether to buy or sell, if you're gonna make a decision, I need you to commit to that decision, and that's not what the Angels did. Like, okay, they decided they were buying. They got Chafin and they got Garcia, who are two guys that are age 35 and older that are gonna go in their bullpen. And if you're gonna do that, like I need to see more. If you're gonna buy, then I need you to buy more than just those two guys. Um, and they didn't do that at all. I mean, they got Oswald Peraza. Like, cool. That doesn't move the needle for me in any meaningful way. And I get it. There's not much they could have done. All of most of their assets are controllable. I want to let go of yet. You could have traded Taylor Ward for something. You could have traded Kenley for something like you mentioned, Yohan Moncada, Tyler Anderson. I know the market probably wasn't ideal for them this year, but I don't know. I mean, you could have done a little something more. Like I would have given them a better grade if they had sold. I would have given them a better grade if they bought more. Instead, they bought very modestly. And you can make the argument that the last time they bought, they went all in on a deadline, it completely blew up in their face. The Lucas Giolito trade in 2023. I get that. But I still we're talking about what you actually did at the deadline. The actual evaluations come in the next 2 months and not in what we're saying here. But I didn't understand the thought process behind, slapping a couple of relievers in the bullpen and calling it a day.
Yeah, it's it was weird. It was weird to say the least.
Very.
So now we move on to the final team of the American League West, the Athletics.
Jeez.
No city affiliation, just
No.
the old A's. I put them down for a B. And yeah, I mean, they're the big deal with them was trading Mason Miller, obviously. They got a pretty large package for him. I guess my one critique would be, Mason Miller, he was the best, you could say was the best reliever in baseball last year. I think has the potential to end up like having another one of those types of seasons. So trading him now, like I know that he obviously has the most control now, but even 2 months down the line, they maybe could have gotten a better package for him. However, the package they did get was pretty good. Getting Leo DeVries out of that trade was good in my opinion, especially for a reliever, even if he has a ton of control and he's really good. So yeah, I can't be too critical because they got someone who's I know MLB Pipeline isn't fully updated, but number 3 in all of baseball right now. I'm sure he'll go down once that gets updated, but still like really, really good. Pretty much consensus like top 25 on all websites, I believe. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, very cool for them to do that. Like Mason Miller will be a loss, but Leo DeVries is certainly a gain. Where did you have the Athletics at?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to where you were at. I gave them a B plus. I really liked what they did with the Mason Miller trade. I know that it's hard to trade such a controllable guy that, meant so much to the franchise last year even. But ultimately, like relievers come and go. You might not be able to find another guy that throws 103, but you could find a guy that is, effective as a closer in the next few years, but you can't find Leo DeVries everywhere. That's just simply what it is. He's a outstanding 18-year-old shortstop. Which, obviously these guys always come with question marks, of course. Like a lot can obviously happen between now and when, if and when he gets to the majors in the next 2 years. Let's just look at Ethan Salas as a perfect example of that. But I don't know. I appreciate taking a risk. And I think both teams did that here. And yeah, I think it was I did like it from the A's though, more specifically.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, I'm giving them a B plus. We'll probably get more into that trade later on, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now we get
Go to the
into
National
the
League.
National League East. Where do you have the Mets at?
Are we start? Oh yeah, they are starting with the Mets. They're in
Yes.
first place, aren't they?
Um,
Uh, yeah. No,
as
the
of
Phillies aren't
yesterday,
first.
that
Oh,
was the
they're
case.
tied. We'll start with the Mets. Whatever, they're tied though. Um,
Okay.
the Mets I gave a B to. I thought they had a fine deadline. You know, much like the Yankees, they committed a lot to addressing their bullpen, getting guys like Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, Gregory Soto. They also got Cedric Mullins, who was a solid piece in the outfield for him, a good rental. Um, they did give up a decent amount, especially in the Rogers trade, which is that was really the first trade that happened all deadline that made me, kind of a bit overwhelmed by what the sellers got. With Blade Tidwell, with Drew Gilbert, who was traded 2 years ago in the Verlander trade, who they got 2 years ago in the Verlander trade, I should say. And then Jose Buto, controllable, starter reliever hybrid that they had, who was decent for them. All for, you know, 2 months of Tyler Rogers, 2 months of Ryan Helsley. But overall, again, I appreciate that they're going for it. Obviously, they can, they're a team that can spend their way out of this if it goes poorly for them in future years. I wish they had added another starter. Um, I still don't have a ton of confidence in Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, Peterson, Holmes playoff rotation. I feel like there could have been another name added to that, whether it be a Gallon, a Merrill Kelly. That's probably the most realistic options. I don't know if they have the prospect capital to have pulled off a Cease or a Joe Ryan, but um, yeah, that's kind of where I was at with the Mets. I like they added to the bullpen. They had another outfielder, but I wish they did more with the rotation.
Right. I put the Mets for an A minus. I think they undoubtedly made their team better and their championship odds higher, which is, kind of the goal of a team in a, potential division winning spot, but definitely a playoff spot at the trade deadline. I think they got some of the best relievers on the market. Like not only did they get extra arms, but they got really good, really valuable arms with Tyler Rogers and Ryan Helsley specifically. Um, and anytime you can get a closer and just slot them into the eighth inning spot, I think that really puts you in a good position as a team. And also what I like is they did not go overboard. They did not, with the Mets and how much they spend, I think the narrative on them is just they just go kind of crazy and overcommit, but they didn't really do that. Like the prospects they gave up were not untouchables by any stretch. And in terms of, their starting rotation, I think I guess I'm a little bit more confident in their starting rotation. Like it's pretty good. It's definitely survivable. And I think in terms of what was on the market, I don't think it would have been that much of an upgrade over the guys that they have. I think, Peterson, Senga, Manaya are all pretty solid. And I think a lot of the guys on the market are pretty solid. And I don't know what the return ask was for Joe Ryan. I know Joe Ryan would have been an upgrade over those guys, but there were not many other starting pitchers on the market in my mind that were a major upgrade over those top three, at least with the Mets. So I think with what they did with their bullpen was really good. Didn't give up too many prospects, so I give them an A minus. What did you think about the Phillies?
Yeah, I gave Philadelphia an A minus. They had one very clear, very glaring need, and they went out and addressed it in the best way that they could have. The Johan Duran trade I thought was really solid. Obviously, they give up quite a lot, but that's kind of what you have to do when you're talking about an elite closer with 2.5 years of control. Also, Harrison Bader was a good one as well. It was a very solid deadline for them overall. Yeah, there's really not much else to say, but they absolutely rocked this one. They did everything that made sense. They did it. If I were to have drawn it up, that's how I would have done it right there. Get an outfielder. It doesn't have to be anyone crazy like a Harrison Bader, and then go get Johan Duran.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I give them an A. They got a great reliever for this year and the next 2 years. So now you don't have to go out in the off season and try to, get a closer like you did this past off season. So that's very good for them. And yeah, their bullpen ERA and bullpen FIP were closer to last than first. I know that. Heading into the trade deadline. I did not realize how bad their outfield was. I mean, they have even now they have the um lowest outfield FWAR in the National League. So Harrison Bader is a very good addition and a pretty necessary addition for them. Provides both offensive and defensive value. And they got him for a fairly low price, which is really good. So I really like the way that they improved their team for this year and the next couple years. And going, selling off some minor league pieces, it kind of makes sense for them organizationally. Like I feel like they're kind of reaching the end of their rope or reaching their end of their window. They got a lot of their more valuable players are either nearing their end of their contracts or approaching their mid-30s, whether that be, Schwarber, Turner, Harper's approaching his mid-30s as well. Real Muto's kind of at the end of his deal as well. They're kind of reaching their end of the rope, so they want to capitalize, and I think that's what they tried to do this past trade deadline, and they did it pretty successfully. On to the third place. It's so funny to think about this.
The 500.
The 500 Miami Marlins.
Yeah, I did like the Marlins trade deadline. I don't remember what I gave them. I gave them a B plus. I'll start. Okay, I think the Marlins trade deadline was more about what they didn't do. Right, they didn't trade Sandy Alcantara. They didn't trade. Edward Cabrera. And you know what? I like it. Like, I know that maybe logistically some of those things may make sense. You'd be trading Alcantara at his lowest value. He's been terrible this year. He, only a half left. It's not a super cheap option, but it's not a super expensive option rather. But I like that they held on to him, especially kind of on the wave that they're riding right now. It's a team that has a lot of momentum in this very moment, and I think Peter Bendix played to that. The Jesus Sanchez trade made sense. I think the return they got was pretty decent. They got a couple of they got Ryan Gusto, who immediately becomes a rotation option for them, and then they got a 19-year-old outfielder, a 20-year-old infielder from Houston. So a couple guys that you can, see if they become anything later down the line. It's probably what made sense there. They could have sold high on Kyle Stowers. They didn't, and I appreciate that. They could have done a lot of different things. As I mentioned, those other two. But yeah, it was a B plus. It was a B plus deadline for them. I thought they did a solid job.
Yeah, I'm actually going to change my grade on them. I think it was maybe a little bit too harsh, but I'm still not super convinced. I have them as a C. I was not like I think they maybe could have gotten more out of the Sanchez deal, or maybe something more that made sense organizationally, like a younger pitcher than Gusto potentially. Although I will say I think it was a good idea to trade Sanchez. I think the execution of it maybe could have been better, but I wasn't studying the market that hard, so could be wrong about that. I think they could have traded Cal Quantrill. I think they could have gotten some sort of value out of that. So I like that they held a lot of the guys they held, but I think they could have traded Cal Quantrill and maybe gotten something out of that. So I gave them a C.
I know that this is like strictly going off of vibes, but like this franchise has been heartbroken through trade so many times, and I kind of appreciate in this moment that they spared everyone.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, yeah, you could have traded Cal Quantrill. Were you really going to get that much? You never know, but odds are probably not.
Right.
Like, yeah. I think fans are having fun watching this group. There's not a ton of, rental pieces other than Quantrill. That's really it. Like I appreciate them kind of keeping the band together for these 2 months, even if it's not going to lead to a postseason. Like growing the game in Miami and having those fans show up, I think is so essential to the sport. With the Latin population down there, with with who's on the team, they're obviously very young. The thing that I talked about with the Marlins this previous year was needing to have an identity, needing to find out who you are as a team, and I think they've done that this year. Like this is a team that wins a lot of close games. They fight. They do a lot of just impressive things, and obviously this weekend against the Yankees, I think, was the perfect example of that. So I appreciate them keeping the band together here, even if maybe in some cases it didn't make the most sense. I think there are just things that matter here that maybe aren't always considered.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. It has been a very good season for them. Um, so on to Atlanta. What did you think about what they did at the deadline?
I gave them a C. My biggest takeaway again was what they didn't do, and unlike the Marlins, I think there are guys they should have traded. Mainly Marcelo Zuna and Raisel Iglesias. I don't know how you don't trade those guys. Like this team is clearly, I get that they don't want to sell too hard. This is still a team that has the talent to compete next year. They don't want to punt on that, and that's totally fine. But Marcelo Zuna and Raisel Iglesias are rentals. You can find those. You can re-sign them if you really want them. I think you have to get something for them, and they failed to do either of those things. I think, especially given the reliever market, even with Raisel Iglesias' numbers and how much he struggled this year, the strikeout to walk numbers are still there, and I think someone would have taken a flyer, believing that they could fix his home run rate. Marcelo Zuna, there is the character stuff, but there are plenty of other examples of teams just not caring about that, especially at the trade deadline. You could have found something for him. Yeah, I think you had to trade those two guys. And I mean, they really didn't do much else. They traded for Tyler Kinley and they traded Rafael Montero. Like they made two trades. They were not the two trades they should have made, and for that, I'm giving them a C.
Yeah, I gave them a D plus for their trade deadline.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the desire was on the market for Ozuna, like were teams really looking for him? I know, obviously with acquiring him, you're also acquiring, his baggage and
Yeah.
what he's brought. So maybe some organizations just didn't want what he represented, and bringing him along to that to that
But
organization.
other
So
than in one case, when does that stop the team?
yeah, no,
There's exactly one guy I can think of with similar character flaws to Ozuna, where the league has actually been like, no, we're not doing this one,
right, right.
and it was not him.
Yeah, right. That is fair, but could have limited their opportunities, even in like the Roberto Osuna
Would have been very
situation.
funny if they traded the Astros. They just ran that back.
Yeah.
I know people loved how much we did that. We're doing it again.
I do know the Roberto Osuna situation, like the Blue Jays got way less value out of that.
That was I think people hated that. Well, obviously one, because they were acquiring a guy with that kind of baggage, but also they were clearly like exploiting the allegations, and because that happened in the middle of all that. Like the
Right.
Ozuna stuff was years ago at this point, and I'm not saying that excuses or like exonerates him of any wrongdoing. Like he still sucks as a person, but like it's not really that comparable to the Osuna case. It's
Yeah, it
just
is.
really the only other precedent we have of something like this, especially at the trade deadline.
It is different timing. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the Braves certainly could have gotten something out of Ozuna. I don't know, like it doesn't seem like they've made efforts to extend him. If that would have been the case, I feel like they would have tried to extend him this past offseason, as he was coming off a really good year. But yeah, they didn't get anything out of him, didn't get anything out of Raisel Iglesias. It seemed they acquired Eric Fetty and Carlos Carrasco
Yeah,
for,
like what?
I guess like to eat up innings and maybe save
Yeah,
some of their other starters. So maybe it makes sense from that respect, but like doesn't, help their the direction of their organization necessarily. So yeah, I don't think they executed well this deadline, so I gave them a D plus, especially considering, there's virtually no chance of them making the playoffs at this point. So on to the Nationals.
yeah. I gave this team a B plus. There's nothing outstanding about it, but I don't know what I would have done differently. Like I feel like I've said that about a lot of teams, but the Nationals traded all their guys that made sense to trade, whether it be Kyle Finnegan. Alex Call was one I wasn't expecting, but that's definitely when you're expecting to have James Wood, Dylan Cruz and Jacob Young in your outfield potentially long term. There's not much of a need for someone like Alex Call, so I think that was a fine trade. maybe you could have gotten something for Josh Bell. Probably not a huge deal. The Michael Soroka trade, you're selling high on him, and good on you for it. Um, yeah, I don't know. I thought they did a fine job. B plus. Don't know. There's not too much I would have done differently about this one.
Yeah, I gave them a B. I think they got a solid return for Mike Soroka, and it was a good idea to trade him. I did find that Alex Call trade interesting considering the amount of control, but you do bring up a good point in what their future outfield looks like. So trading Alex Call probably makes a good bit of sense. And yeah, like they should have traded Kyle Finnegan, and they did. They didn't really leave uh any players that you really had to trade untraded. So yeah, they kind of did what they had to, but nothing too crazy. So I gave them a B. On to the National League Central. I'll start with the Brewers. I gave the Brewers a C plus, just above average. I basically made C like my average.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's more old school, given great given modern grading curves, but gave them a C plus. I liked the Shelby Miller edition. But yeah, they didn't do a whole lot much else. I think they could have added a bat. Their lineup is not the strongest, and there were bats being dealt. Brewers didn't really make effort to get any of those. So and they have added hitters at the trade deadline before, just didn't do it this year. But they didn't really set their organization back. They improved their team slightly. But for a team in sole possession of a top division spot, you would have maybe expected more. So I gave them a C plus.
Yeah, I give them a B minus. We're pretty much, I don't know. I feel pretty similarly about it. I don't know. I didn't expect the Brewers to come out swing necessarily. Um, that's just not what they do. And I don't know if there was a big move that I think they should have made. Um, so for that reason, it was just kind of an average deadline for me. The moves they did make weren't crazy. I feel like, even if I didn't want them to make a big move, I feel like they could have done better than, Danny Jansen and Shelby Miller. I did kind of appreciate that trade where I think they literally just took Jordan Montgomery with Shelby Miller because they would rather just pay the remaining money for Jordan Montgomery than to trade a player for Shelby Miller. So that's the only reason, because he's out for the year and is a free agent at the end of the year. He will never pitch an inning for the Brewers, at least on this contract. So I think the strategy was, we'll take Montgomery just to get him off your hands. We'll pay some of his money because we want Shelby Miller, but we also don't want to trade a player for Shelby Miller. So we'll just do that instead. I mean, really, the Brewers' big acquisition was Andrew Vaughn. That was done a month and a half ago, and he's been fantastic ever since. The underlying metrics support that too. So maybe if you consider that, it was a much better deadline. But that's, again, we're not evaluating based on what's happened on the field since. We're evaluating based on what we saw at 6 p.m. or I guess like 7 p.m. in the Brewers case, because the Shelby Miller trade was announced later. But for me, it was a B minus.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I if I were covering baseball at the major league level, I'd try to contact Jordan Montgomery and what is the situation? Does he have to switch his Tommy John recovery over to the Brewers facility, and he just is gonna live in Milwaukee for the next 2 months and recover there? I wonder what his emotions are about it all, considering there's literally no chance that he pitches for the Brewers, at least under this contract. What's going to go on there? I'd be curious. That's something I would be interested to hear about.
Yeah.
On to the Chicago Cubs. I had them at a D plus. They are definitely one of the more competitive teams in the National League. I don't think they made enough noise. I think they probably should have added a higher profile starter. I think there's been a hole for an ace, I guess, and maybe Matthew Boyd has filled that to some degree, but even just with depth wise, it's been missing with the Justin Steele injury, and they did not really add to that. Michael Soroka has the potential to be good. His FIP is in the low fours, but he's likely, if he's going to start a playoff game, that's probably game 4-ish, or around there, if my memory serves me correct on how that rotation looks. Yeah, I think they could have been more aggressive on, the Kelly, Cease, Joe Ryan fronts, and it didn't seem like they were. So I gave them a D+.
Yeah, I gave them a C minus, and for pretty much every reason you said. They needed to get a better pitcher than Michael Soroka. No disrespect to him, but yeah, we're looking at a playoff rotation of Shota Imanaga, Matthew Boyd, Michael Soroka, and Colin Ray, I guess, is just or actually probably Jameson Taillon. He is making rehab starts right now. Yeah, Justin Steele is not coming back this year, right?
No.
No, he got elbow surgery. That's not a comeback for the playoffs type of injury. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen them make a better move. Um, Offensively, they didn't need to do anything. They got Willie Castro, and that was fine. I didn't have any problem with that. Soroka was a fine addition. It shouldn't have been the addition for the rotation though. So it's a C minus for me. Like this might be the only year in which you have Kyle Tucker. You traded a lot to go get him. You haven't extended him. You're getting way more than you thought from guys like Michael Bush, guys like PCA, Carson Kelly. Like you've had so many like 80th percentile or higher outcomes out of your offense this year. Like I needed to see more of a commitment to this team to make them a World Series contender. And I don't feel like I'm not saying they're not a World Series contender, but I don't think they made the moves to really drive that home in this deadline.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I as you were talking, I was looking at the Reds transactions, and TJ Friedl is on the restricted list.
He played today.
It said August 1. Or maybe he's off it now. Oh
yeah. I mean, he played today, so
he was on it for one day. Okay, so my bad.
all right.
But yeah, so Cubs at a D+ for me, a C- for you. And now on to the Cincinnati Reds, who definitely they made moves for sure. I still have them at a C though. I think it was more noise than actually, improving the team or improving any future playoff or championship odds. They traded for Zach Littell, who I believe is a pure rental. And yeah, it could help them out for this year, but I think his FIP is in the upper 4s. I don't know if I trust the sustainability of his performance necessarily. And then they got Ke'Bryan Hayes, who has a lot of control, but his OPS has been under 600 for the last 2 years, albeit he's a Gold Glove defender. But he's all in all, he's been kind of a below average player for the past 2 years. So I think they it has potential, but that's all I'm seeing right now. I don't see it taking a great effect on their organization. So that's why I have the Reds at a C right now.
Actually was a bit different on the Reds. I gave them a B+. I thought they did a lot of solid moves, adding to the rotation. When Hunter Green comes back, they have a pretty full rotation for the rest of the year, in which they are, I think, 4 games out of a playoff spot or something like that. The first team out of the National League as well. I do really like the Ke'Bryan Hayes deal. I think it has a lot of upside. Obviously, there's a lot that needs to happen for that upside to be fulfilled, but he's exactly who I talk about in terms of guys that could be so much better if they pull the ball and hit it in the air. Unfortunately, Ke'Bryan hasn't really done any of those things consistently, but if he can do it, he's a guy where his average exit velocity is usually hanging around 90 miles per hour. He's obviously moving to one of the most hitter-friendly ballparks in the league. Like, if he can even just find a way to do one of those things more consistently, I think you're going to see some really solid offensive seasons out of him. And he's a guy where, given his contract and his defensive abilities, you really don't need to ask too much out of him. He's a guy that needs to be a league average bat, and you're looking at like a 4 to 5 win season pretty consistently. So I like that they got him for the next 5 years. They gave up a decent prospect, obviously. That's kind of what happens there. The reason why I didn't give them a better grade, the Reds, is that I wish they addressed their bullpen more. They actually traded bullpen pitchers, and albeit Taylor Rogers is not performing particularly well this year, but when you look at the back end of that bullpen with, it's Emilio Pagan, Tony Santillan, Graham Ashcraft, Scott Barlow. Like, I need to see better than that.
Right. Yeah. I definitely see what you're saying on that. Um, on to the
I forgot that Alexis Diaz was on the Dodgers now.
yeah, what a crazy plot, crazy just turn of events. He was looked at as like one of the more promising young relievers out there, and
Yeah.
for good reason. Yeah, just hopefully he comes. Hopefully the Dodgers revive him like Brazier-esque to just completely bring him back.
Yeah.
Um, but the St. Louis Cardinals, they definitely were better in the standings for most of the year, but have fell off as of late, at least over the past month or so, and they decided to sell. Um, and I gave them a B for this trade deadline. Their big move was trading Ryan Helsley. I think it was a good idea to sell. I don't think it would have made sense to try and um, build for a playoff push. I think the odds of them making the playoffs are pretty low. I had them in last place entering the season. And yeah, I think they did a good job getting something out of Helsley. They met the standard for me, so I give them a B.
Yeah, I pretty much echo your sentiment there. I gave them a B plus. Like I said, they made all the moves that made sense. Um, they didn't, they didn't sell to the point of taking themselves out of contention for next year, where I think they can compete, but they got rid of all the people that made sense. Steven Matz, Phil Maton, Ryan Helsley, obviously Eric Fetty. I mean, getting rid of Eric Fetty makes this team better. Um, I don't know, but I need to see this followed up by something. I think a hot take that I have is they're going to trade Brendan Donovan over the next offseason to make room for JJ Weatherholt. I would like to see that turn into a starting pitcher. That ideally one that replaces Miles Michaelis, as in he is not returning next year. But yeah, I mean, I need to see how this one is followed up, certainly. But this is obviously more importantly than anything else, the last trade deadline under the John Mozeliak era. This was effectively like the last thing that he really did as the Cardinals GM, and now it's time for Chaim Bloom to take over. And they didn't do anything too major as they set up for the new regime. So I think you probably shouldn't have done anything major for that reason. I think you gotta, let Chaim come in with a full slate and see what he wants to work with. And they did that. So for me, it's a B plus.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot to mention, yeah, the Steven Matz trade I think was a good thing for them. Blaze Jordan has some good potential. I think has gotten over some
Was also drafted by Chaim Bloom.
drafted by yeah, good story there. Yeah, and seemed set to, do, perform for Mississippi State, but was convinced by the Red Sox to go pro. So yeah, rooting for him in that respect. On to the Pittsburgh Pirates, who we always positively praise for their organizational decisions. Um,
And there's nothing
however,
different happening here.
yeah, I have them at a D minus. The Pittsburgh Pirates. I think they return for Bednar. I know. Actually, it was kind of a funny social media interaction, but I know Jeff Passan was tweeting about what the scouts had on one of the players
Randy
that
Flores.
yeah, Flores, yeah, or the one of the players that the Pirates got for the David Bednar return, but I still think the Pirates maybe could have gotten more out of him, especially considering that Bednar is not a full-on rental. He has 1.5 years of control left rather than half a year of control. Also, the Pirates decided to trade Key Brian Hayes at his almost lowest possible value, like coming off to, this is his second consecutive season at a sub 600 OPS. Like Hayes, if Hayes just had a good next couple months, they could have gotten a lot more out of that trade, I think. And yeah, they still have Tommy Pham. Like Tommy Pham is the king of getting traded, and they just did not do that, even though he's only under control for this year. So yeah, I think the Pirates could have done a lot better. They get a D minus from me.
Yeah, I also think the Pirates could have done a lot better, and in fact, I think everyone did better than them. I gave them the only F of this deadline. There are three players with expiring contracts that the Pirates, I think, should have traded, and there are three players that they did trade, and there is no overlap on those two lists. Andrew Heaney is still here. Tommy Pham is still here. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is still here. None of them should be here. Tommy Pham has like an 1100 OPS in the last month. Like this was not why is he still here? You could have sold high on him. Even if even if people are going to see through it, they're still going to do something. You didn't have to trade Bednar. You didn't have to trade Key Brian Hayes. And who was the other one that they traded? Bailey Falter. You didn't have to trade him either because none of them were under control. And they really didn't get anything that I'm too impressed by in any of those deals. Like, again, you have the leverage here. Like, these guys are controllable, and there's reason to believe that their value is going to go up. Maybe not so much with Bednar, but definitely with Hayes and probably with Falter as well. You didn't have to just give them away at the first offer you got, which I kind of feel like is what happened here. Yeah, it was just a mess of a deadline all around. This team is going to have Andrew Heaney starting games for them for no reason. They're going to have Tommy Pham roam in the outfield when he should be the first guy off the bench for a playoff contender. And IKF's going to be there as well. This was a disaster on all fronts. It's an F. It's one of the worst deadlines I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah. And the Pirates are sort of infamous for that in some cases. Although, I mean, considering how the Archer trade looked back in like 2019, it didn't end up being the absolute worst. It was still a loss for them, but
Yeah.
it could have been way worse. On to the National League West. Where do you have the Dodgers at?
Yeah, it was a weird one for the Dodgers. Like, what are you supposed to do when you already have every player in the league?
Yeah.
And half your I mean, this is a cliche thing that people make fun of managers for saying, and rightfully so, when they say like, well, the real acquisitions are the guys that are coming off the injured list for us. No, that's actually what it is for the Dodgers. Like, they just got Blake Snell back. They got Tyler Glasnow back a few weeks ago. They will hopefully be getting more guys back, whether it be Sasaki, possibly Max Muncy, some of the bullpen guys, Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, who they just put on the IL. So there was not really much for them to do, and they didn't really do a whole lot. They got Alex Call from the Nationals. They got the Dustin May trade I obviously really liked for them. Like, I don't know what else. They got Brock Stewart, who was cool. That could be an interesting, trade for them going forward. And for that reason, I gave them a B. It was fine. There's obviously not much they really could have done. Yeah, I don't really know much else, if there is much else to say there.
Yeah. I'm actually, as you mentioned, the May trade, I upped them, not a full letter grade, but like I brought them from a B- to a B, because I forgot about that, because I guess like I forget that buying teams can also sell at the deadline, or sell off a piece at the deadline too, which is what they did. But I like that trade for them, obviously, which went into my critique of the Red Sox. But yeah, Dodgers get a B from me. I like the Brock Stewart edition. The Alex Call edition can be productive over the next few years, as well as he's very controllable. And yeah, I agree. They didn't really need much considering what's coming back from the IL. There aren't really starting pitchers on the market better than Blake Snell or Tyler Glasnow. Like, maybe there's an argument for Joe Ryan, but still, it's not much of an upgrade and maybe not worth selling off valuable prospect pieces when you already have some really valuable major league talent coming back off the IL. So yeah, like they didn't really need to do much. They didn't do much, and I think it was good execution to not overcommit, especially considering that they're not only built for success for this year, but for many years after. So overcommitting also would have been like, okay, that's kind of weird to do that. The Dodgers have been the model of succeeding now and in the future, and they kind of kept that, in my opinion, for this trade deadline. But yeah, they didn't do anything too spectacular, so I can't give them necessarily an A. So they get a B from me. How would you grade the Padres?
Yeah, this one for me is the biggest, most subject to change grade, because it could be an A plus and we could look back at it in 3 years and be like, oh my God, what were they thinking at this deadline? Terrible. But for now, I think it is a B, in between the two, but overall it's good. They gave up, obviously the trade where you're looking at and thinking, wow, they gave up a lot is the Mason Miller JP Sears one. They also gave up a lot in the Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano trade, as I mentioned earlier. I saw a tweet saying, like, I don't know if AJ Preller is good at his job, but I know he's good for baseball. And I think that's the best way of putting it. There's no one out there that just says like, screw it, let's try it, and dumps prospects for. I think it's hilarious how many prospects AJ Preller has traded that have turned out to be stars, and he's just like, yeah, I don't really care, I will keep doing it. Like I do respect that. I don't think it's like, I think he understands, like, yes, trading Leo DeVries is might be disastrous for us, especially for a reliever, but I'm doing it and you can't stop me.
Yeah.
I was hoping that this would be like, that trade would be countered with a subsequent trade of maybe Robert Suarez, maybe packaging him with Dylan Cease to go elsewhere, and getting some controllable pieces that can also help you this year. Ultimately that didn't happen. So hey, they built the greatest bullpen of all time. Like, the Padres already had 4 relievers make the All-Star game this year, and they added Mason Miller. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, like I said, if they win the World Series with this, in the next couple of years, then we will probably look back at this trade deadline as one of the reasons why it happened with this year. There's certainly a contender for it. If they don't, I think this could be very bad. So right now I'm putting it in the middle. If you were going to trade Leo DeVries, I wouldn't have done it for a reliever, even if it's the best reliever with 4 years of control. But that's just me. I feel like you could have done better for that, but that's something that we can explore later on.
Right. Yeah. I also have them at a B. Yeah, I agree. It's very subject to change, and I don't know how much differently I'd feel about this organization if they did nothing at the deadline. And I mean organization in terms of, short term and long term. But I definitely think they improved themselves for this year, that's for sure, and improved their World Series odds a little bit. Mason Miller, he'll definitely help, but as you mentioned, bullpen was not a glaring need for them. In fact, their bullpen leads all of baseball in ERA and FIP. So it's not like it's not the Jhoan Duran acquisition for the Phillies, where the Phillies had a below average bullpen and now they're getting a really good reliever. The Padres had the best bullpen in baseball statistically, and they made it better, but they didn't need it as much. It's not helping them as much as it would, your average team. Also, I think Ryan O'Hearn, like, he's a valuable guy in the market, but I don't think he's that big of an upgrade over Gavin Sheets. He's kind of replaced him in that DH role. But Gavin
They're the
Sheets,
same player.
yeah, they are the same player, and Gavin Sheets also, his results haven't been great, but his underlying numbers show that he can be a very good offensive player, and I think he's gotten a bit unlucky this year. He has like a BABIP in the 270s, despite a line drive rate being like above 30% and an average exit velocity being, I think, 91 miles per hour. And his pull rate is also really, really good. I think they could have been more patient with Gavin Sheets instead of giving up extra prospects for Ryan O'Hearn. But I do like the Ramon Laureano addition, because something that I mentioned and why I was a little bit more down on the Padres this year was I think they had a big hole in left field. Ramon Laureano fills that for sure. Although I don't think he will keep up his pace. I don't think he'll be, a consistent, as consistent a bat as he's been throughout the year. It's just hard to imagine that. He's never really been that guy in his career, so it'd be hard to imagine him keeping up that pace in San Diego. But I think he is definitely an upgrade in left field, no matter, even if he kind of leans back on career averages with San Diego. So I think it was positive, but a lot of it was not super necessary, so I can't necessarily give them an A. So yeah, I mean, definitely made a lot of noise, that's for sure. On to the Giants.
Yeah, the Giants, I gave an A- to. I actually was really happy with their deadline. Like I said, they had to pick a lane. They sold and I like how they sold. I really like the return they got for both Camilo Doval and for Tyler Rogers. Trading Yastrzemski was fine as well. Something that I realized, Chris, this is kind of crazy. The Giants have two players right now that are arbitration eligible next year, and they're both ARB1.
Wait, what?
The Giants have two players on their roster right now that are arbitration eligible next year, and they're both going into ARB1.
Huh.
It's Patrick Bailey and it's Ryan Walker. Those are the only guys that have arbitration with the Giants next year at this point in time. Everyone else is either signed to a contract or they're pre-arb.
Interesting.
So, I mean, talk about trading all the guys that make sense.
Yeah.
They did it. Could they have gotten anything for Justin Verlander? To be honest, I don't think so.
No.
I really don't. Could they have gotten something for Wilmer Flores? And maybe. I don't think it's a huge deal that he's still there. No, I really like this deadline. I think the moves that they made, made sense, but I also think they got some good pieces out of them. And I'm excited to see, what comes out of them. So the Giants had a very solid deadline for me. It's weird because like 2 weeks ago, we could have been talking about them buying, but they obviously went through a bit of a rough stretch and they acted accordingly. Difficult decision to sell and they sold. So props to them for that. I am giving them an A-.
Yeah, I gave the Giants a B. I think they kind of met the standard for me. I think I like the return they got for Tyler Rogers. Like they got Drew Gilbert out of the Tyler Rogers deal, who's maybe not as valuable as he was 2 years ago when he got traded for Justin Verlander, but I know he was a very valuable asset in that deadline, and I think has the potential to make an impact at the major league level. And yeah, trading Camilo Doval also made sense. I think they did what they were supposed to. And yeah, that's why I give them a B. But yeah, I don't really have much to say on the Giants, to be honest. So now on to the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks I gave a B+ to. Like I said, they had to pick a lane. They sold. They decided to sell, and they very much sold. I wish they got a little bit more from Eugenio Suarez, but I also mainly wish they traded Zach Gallen. That's what stops it from being an A- for me. There was a report saying that I think it said that like Mike Hazen was, just didn't, he just didn't see the market for Suarez materialize the way that he had hoped it would. Is what it is. Either way, you did much of what you could. You got Tyler Locklear out of the trade, who I have to imagine will be playing first base every day for this team going forward. The Burns injury really just sidestepped this team the whole year, and there was just no coming back from it, I think. You'll obviously have him next year. You'll obviously have, Eduardo Rodriguez next year, unless you decide to trade him for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, this was just unfortunately a lost year. There's a lot of games they could have won back in like April and May that they lost. A lot of those weird, like crazy high scoring games with a bunch of lead changes they blew a lot of leads in those, and they ended up like the Suarez 4 home run game they lost. Like I feel like people kind of don't remember that part of things. So that being said, it's a B+. They sold. It would have been an A- if they had traded Zach Allen as well.
Yeah, I kind of graded the Diamondbacks based on the execution of their sale. I think it was kind of given that they were going to sell. I gave them a C-. I think they could have gotten more out of this sale.
Yeah, that's fair.
I will say like the return for Merrill Kelly was solid. I think they kind of met the standard on trading Merrill Kelly. It really surprised me how little they got out of Eugenio Suarez. I don't think they and maybe I'm looking at the wrong rankings, maybe I'm not looking in the right areas, but I think they could have gotten something more valuable out of Eugenio Suarez. He was one of the most valuable players traded on the market, and the return did not necessarily represent that effectively, in my opinion. Also, like I'm kind of curious on the Zach Gallen sweepstakes. Like, obviously, I think the Diamondbacks have kind of made their decision on who they've committed to long term, pitching wise, and that's Corbin Burns. I don't think they've really made any effort to extend Zach Gallen. I don't know if they're trying to, keep the relationship good between them and Zach Gallen to sign him this offseason. But if that's not the case, I think they really should have tried to make a good effort to trade Zach Gallen. Like, although he hasn't had the best year this year, he's 2 years removed from a Cy Young finalist season, had fairly similar FIP numbers last year, or not far off FIP numbers last year compared to that Cy Young finalist season. He's even still this year had decent strikeout and walk numbers. I think they could have gotten something out of Zach Gallen. They didn't. And a team could have used him and maybe traded something somewhat valuable for him. But I guess the Diamondbacks didn't think that. So yeah, I think they could have executed their sale a little bit better. That's why I gave them a C minus. On to the
Final
Colorado
team.
Rockies.
I gave them an A minus. There was really only one move that made sense, and they made it. They also traded Tyler Kinley for a 26-year-old relief pitcher who is in Double-A. Cool. Yeah, I mean, you look at the players on this roster, see a lot of youth, whether it be with Tovar, with Hunter Goodman, Brenton Doyle still has only a year and a half of service time under his belt. They probably weren't going to trade Mickey Moniak given his home road splits. They're kind of crazy. And I don't think they were going to trade the incoming free agents like German Marquez because I don't think anyone was going to want them. I didn't even hear German Marquez's name like in a rumor.
Yeah.
Which, why, fork found in the kitchen, why would you? But yeah, I mean, that's just not a movie you were going to make.
Right. The Rockies, well, I considered the McMahon trade part of it. So I did.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. 2 trades that made sense, and they made them both. And they were with the same team.
So I gave them an A. Because I was actually surprised.
Phenomenal deadline, Rockies.
Yeah, I gave them an A. I think they're like, at least as much as I can evaluate personally, the prospects they got were not bad at all. Rock Riggio was the prospect they got in the Jake Bird trade. And according to Fangraphs, he is now their number 7 prospect in the organization. And he has
Jake Bird is pre-arb.
True. But Riggio has a 167 weighted runs created plus in the minors this year. Yeah, I like that for them. And then Griffin Herring was acquired in the Ryan McMahon trade. He's the number 5 organizational prospect on MLB Pipeline and has a 2.86 FIP in the minors this year. So, yeah, I think they got good value out of what they traded. And they made the moves that made sense. Anytime you got a reliever that's rolling hot, and you don't really have any future, you got to get rid of the guy, and that's what the Athletics and Rockies did. So yeah, I think they were one of the winners of the trade deadline. It'll help set them up for
heck of a job.
Help set them up for a 58-win season next year, if that. But yeah, that's all for the team grades. What did you want to extend on some more of these deals?
Yeah, there's I think a few trades we can maybe just touch on a little deeper. The 4 that I had in mind were the Suarez trade, the Mason Miller trade, the Correa trade, and the Jhoan Duran trade. Whichever one of those you want to start with.
It's a good question. I feel like
let's start with the Suarez trade since it happened first out of those 4. Yeah, like I said, the Mariners, if they wanted him, they had him, and they did want him enough. I think a lot of the just automatic assumptions that people have is that's not going to be good for him. It's a pitcher's park. Thankfully, we have the 2 years that Eugenio Suarez played in Seattle prior to being traded in a salary dump to the Diamondbacks. And it really doesn't matter. He had actually relatively equal home road splits. His strikeout rate was, similarly bad, both on home and on the road during those 2 years. And actually, according to these baseball savants, projector, he actually would have more home runs in Seattle this season than in Arizona. When you pull the ball as much as he does, and when you barrel it in the air as much as he does, a 29.2% pulled air rate to go along with a 15.1% barrel rate. Doesn't matter where you're playing your games. Those are going out everywhere. And I think it was obviously, it's a trade that forced you to take the Mariners seriously, and forces you to understand that from a front office standpoint, this is different. This is a team that is going for. They're talented enough to do it. Obviously, you just have to see the team do it on the field, and they're they're hanging onto a playoff spot by a thread at this point. They did just take 3 out of 4 in a big home series against the Rangers. They've only played teams in their division in the second half, Chris. They started with the Astros. They then went to Anaheim, went to Sacramento, and then finished off with 4 against Texas at home. They went 2 games over 500 in that span. Could have wished for better, especially given that they split with the Angels and lost to the A's and actually beat the Rangers and Astros in the series. But either way, they played up to their competition in the series, and Suarez is only going to make them better.
Right. And yeah, if you want to, if you're a Mariners fan looking for more confidence in the Suarez edition, Mike Petriello has a very good
Yes.
article on MLB.com that was published on August 1st. And it basically goes into like, this is not the same Eugenio Suarez that was dealt by the Mariners. This is a very different hitter. His stance is different, his full-on approach is different, and that's why his results are different. It's not only because he went to a different ballpark. So yeah, I think I agree. It's a very good addition for them. They got the best bat on the market. Naylor might be the second best bat on the market too. So they may have gotten the two best hitters on the market, on the corners of their infield. And, not only that, but that was one of the weaker parts of their team was their hitting, as we've come to know with Seattle. So yeah, I mean, especially outside of Raleigh. But yeah, I mean, that it was necessary. And like I said earlier, it was good to see them go full aggressive instead of kind of doing the push-pull thing that we're used to with the Seattle Mariners.
Just for some perspective, Eugenio Suarez ranks 5th in home runs this year with 36, but he ranks 1st in no doubt home runs, which is home runs that are gone at all 30 ballparks. So if you want any reason to believe that Seattle won't be an issue for him, there it is right there. Everything, most of his home runs are out everywhere, no matter the ballpark, no matter the conditions.
Yeah. And yeah, why I also like it for Seattle is they kept pretty much all their valuable assets. I think all their top
that too.
All their top 5 prospects were untouched, I believe. I know all websites are different, but I think according to MLB Pipeline, like every one of their top 5 was left untouched. So yeah, I mean, like Harry Ford's still there. Other guys are still there. I haven't memorized their top prospects, but
my big takeaway is, sorry if I interrupted you, but the Mariners made the playoffs in 2022. They broke the drought. They fell short in 2023. They fell short in 2024, and a lot of blame has gone into ownership in the front office, right? They didn't do much in 2024 in the offseason over the deadline. People still, are angry at Jerry Dipoto over the 54% comment. That's kind of what the last couple of years have been defined by, is great play on the field undermined by negligent ownership and in front office work. If this team fails to make the playoffs, I don't think you can blame the front office or ownership for it.
Yeah, I would agree. They've set them up in the right situation, and like kind of July 31st is like the end of when the front office can really make an impact for a team in that given year. So they've done what they've been able to do. Now it's all up to the players and how they execute. And then yeah, if these deals don't end up good, then we can only really judge that in hindsight. These look like good deals now, and they look like good deals heading into it. So yeah, I think that's just the objective way to look at it. Yeah, what deal maybe would you want to get into next?
I'll let you make the decision. I chose the next one.
So it was what?
Miller trade, Duran, and Correa.
I wanted to talk about Correa.
All right, let's do it.
because I think that was the biggest surprise to me,
Yeah,
and the biggest. Even with Suarez moving, I still think he's the best player to have been dealt in
that's
this
fair.
trade deadline. Um, like probably we'll see how the top 50s look next year, but um Correa might still be ranked higher than Suarez, but they're around the same level for me right now. Correa, it this was a surprise. Um, and honestly, maybe just thinking too much in a Red Sox lens, but this deal does make the Devers deal look a lot better. Um,
Yep.
considering like this was this was obviously a salary dump, and Devers was a salary dump, plus they got four guys, granted, like not crazy high quality, but they did get four guys, including Kyle Harrison and Jordan Hicks and James Tibbs, who they dealt for Dustin May. But the Carlos Correa trade, very obviously a salary dump. What did you think about what went down there?
Here's my biggest thought process here. Imagine you are, and I saw a tweet about this, so this is not my full original thought, but it's definitely a sentiment that I echo. Imagine being Matt Miklewski. You are 26 years old. You've been in professional baseball for 5 years now. You are currently a relief pitcher in high A, and you have a 5.68 ERA in 12 and two-thirds innings pitched. Obviously that's not exactly where you want to be in your baseball career, but then you get traded straight up for Carlos Correa. What what is that? Um, yeah, I mean, we'll talk plenty about the Twins because there's obviously another Twins deal that we're talking about here. I'll get their perspective on it. Yeah, I don't like this deal for them. I'm sure obviously the main goal above all else is salary, but like Correa is still a name. I know that he's having a down year. I know that you're trading him at less value than you would have at this point, let's say last year, but you have leverage over the Astros in that they probably want him back. There's obviously a lot of goodwill that would happen there. Um, Plus they just lost a third baseman for the year and are clearly going for it in some capacity. Like you got to get good prospects or have the Astros take all the money. Like they did neither of those things. And sure, the Astros took most of it. And really, at the end of the day, I think that's all that matters, especially with the team likely up for sale in the next couple of years, maybe even months. At the end of the day, if that's the main purpose, then you did it. Congrats. You should have done better than that. Like again, the one prospect that the Twins got in return is a 26-year-old relief pitcher in high A with a 5.68 ERA. Like I gotta have hope that I'm getting something here. And I don't have that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, and the Twins are eating a little bit of money too.
Mhm.
It's pretty
Yeah,
wild.
they're paying another 24 million.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously the value the Twins would get back would be a lot more if Correa was being paid 15 million a year instead of, over 30 million a year. That's how a lot of these deals go. That's why the main piece in the Giancarlo Stanton trade was Starlin Castro and
Yeah.
not, a super not Gleyber Torres or anything back in 2017. Um, and that's why, the Devers deal was underwhelming to a lot of Red Sox fans is but the reason why that had to be underwhelming was they were they were trading off $250 million. And that's the situation with Carlos Correa. He's getting paid about 33 million a year over the next 3 years after this year. Still has a lot left to be paid for this year. That's what's happening. The transaction is the money, not necessarily any prospect capital that's happening. However, yeah, I agree. I think there's still the Twins could have gotten more out of this. Maybe if they waited till the off season, they could have, negotiated more and gotten a little bit more out of it. Because
Mhm.
yeah, as you mentioned, like Correa's value is not very high right now. He's having one of the worst years of his career, and he's shown the ability to bounce back from a year like this. 2024 was much better than his 2023 season. Could have waited potentially until his bat got hot. I know he's been getting a little bit unlucky this year too. Could have waited till the luck evened out a little bit. Yeah, he's still got some value. He's in his age, I think 30 season.
Yeah.
And still has the potential to be like a 5-win player. Just hasn't shown it necessarily this year. But yeah, like I agree. Like the timing was definitely a bit odd.
And just like, I don't know, this analysis is entirely vibes based, but there is a vibes element to this trade. Like this is a homecoming. It's a place where, I don't think there was ever any really much of an indication that Carlos Correa wanted to leave. Like, did the Astros ever put up much of a serious offer in for agency to him? Like they could have had him for much cheaper than what he signed with the Giants or the Mets. They didn't do that. They chose Jeremy Pena over him, and for fair reason. He won World Series MVP in his rookie year, like, and was a solid player for them. But, this is my guess being, if not the first, definitely the most interest they've shown in bringing him back since he left. I mean, obviously, because they actually went out and did it, but yeah, there is a vibes-based element to analyzing this trade. Like, you're bringing the band back together. I always kind of felt for Altuve that everyone from the 2017 team left and left him as the only guy that is sort of a face of the 2017 team. Like, I watched the Mariners on the road a couple weeks ago, and Altuve still gets booed like it's 2021, and people are seeing him for the first time in the stands since the whole thing broke. And you know what? Like now he doesn't have to go through that alone. Like I think maybe that will matter for him in a way. I can't imagine the boos really affect him in year 5, especially because it's like, I don't know, when it's a whole stadium, I don't think it's really that big of a thing. You know what I mean? Like it's just noise.
Right.
Like if it was almost like one really loud heckler that you could hear, I feel like that would affect you worse than a whole stadium.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
almost. Yeah.
But
Yeah, for
like
sure.
everywhere he goes on the road, he still gets booed the same way that he was 4 years ago. And like now he's got someone to go through that with him. Like, I don't know. Springer left, Bregman left, Tucker was traded, although he wasn't really on the 2017 team. But like, all the guys that he did, and like for him especially, like he, you know, he moved to left field so that the Astros could potentially re-sign Alex Bregman. He begged them to re-sign Correa. Like, I think this will matter for him, and I could see him even being better because of Correa's presence, back with him there.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's a cool move for the Astros because now there's not really any pressure in the off season.
Yeah, like I said, you already set your lineup for next year. You just need to figure out a rotation and maybe a bullpen.
Yeah, there's no real pressure to add anything offensively in the off season next year. Like, not only are you making a trade and helping yourself for this year, but you're basically signing a 3-year deal for Carlos Correa, and that deal only goes through his age 33 season, and then I think it's a bunch of team options after that. So yeah, it'll be it's a cooler deal for the Astros for sure. And yeah, Twins definitely could have gotten more. Anything more on this trade?
No, I think that's kind of it.
Yeah. So
But
on to
it does feel right seeing him back in an Astros uniform. I will say that. I'm
I
excited to
agree.
see like the kind of reception he gets when they come back to Houston.
I agree. And honestly, yeah, like I think now that this trade happened, I like, 10 years down the line, I'll look at this at the Correa Twins era as such a weird time.
Yeah, right.
Um, like yeah,
Perhaps even weirder than the Giants and Mets eras.
yes, indeed, indeed. Um, but yeah, I guess we can advance to the Duran trade.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, these next two are bullpen trades. I think very different. One was sort of a team necessity. The other was just strengthening strengths. But yeah, the Phillies add to their bullpen, which was pretty necessary. What did you think about how this about kind of the angles of this trade?
I feel for Twins fans. Like I mentioned earlier, it shouldn't have gotten to this point 2 years after making the playoffs and winning your first playoff series in almost 2 decades. Like when I saw, and a lot of the people's reaction to this trade was like, oh my God, the Duran entrance in Philly is going to be so sick. And they're right, it is. That, like, I felt for Twins fans when I watched that, man. Like, we're Red Sox fans. We've watched them trade really good players and watched them thrive elsewhere. Like, that like that physically hurt me for Twins fans watching the Duran entrance in Philly.
No,
Like I don't
that's
know how
fair.
you could like I would need to take a break from watching the sport if I saw that as a Twins fan.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it.
That I that was really like that was my takeaway from that more than wow, it is sick in Philly because it is. Like it looks cool. It's awesome. Man, I just feel for the Twins fans that have to watch that somewhere else. Because in many ways it was kind of hidden to them, right? Like everybody knows the Edwin Diaz entrance. A lot of people know the Felix Bautista entrance back from like 2022 and 23. Uh Not a lot of people, I think, really knew the Duran entrance. And it's going to become so mainstream now. And it was like Minnesota's like hidden thing. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right. Yeah, I didn't know it. I didn't really know about that entrance, to be honest.
It's great.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. And yeah, I saw it in Philly. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, kind of like talking about the Phillies and their need for it. Through July 30, the Phillies ranked 24th in Major League Baseball in bullpen ERA and 23rd in bullpen FIP. So yeah, this is a deal where yeah, they really needed it. And it kind of made sense to give off the package that they did, especially considering that this is their closer for likely this year and the 2 years after. So yeah, it's just one of those deals where it's like it really makes a lot of sense, and it's really not that much of a surprise that it happened.
No, I agree with you. I think this was for both sides what made the most sense if you were going to do this trade. The Painter was not going to happen, but they get two top 100 prospects in Tate and in Mick Abel. The Twins rotation still looks actually fine, largely because they didn't trade any of their starters, much like anybody else. But at full health, you got Pablo Lopez in there, you got Joe Ryan. Mick Abel will make a very fun number 3 one day, hopefully, and then Bailey Ober, Simeon Woods, Richardson, Zebby Matthews fill in the blanks. Obviously, it's the offense and the bullpen were decimated, but yeah, this was obviously the what you had to do if you're the Phillies. Like you were a lockdown closer away from looking like I would even say a World Series favorite, not just a contender. Um, this team has. Do they have the best record in the National League at this point?
I think it might be the
They
Brewers.
don't. It's the Brewers, but still, like this is, and it's the Dodgers are they're third, they're fourth behind the Brewers, Cubs, and Dodgers. But still, like this is a team that I think is very complete. I don't really know what needs to be added to it at this point. Um, I think you could even argue they just are the most complete team, definitely in the National League with this Duran trade.
Right, right. Yeah, they have one of the best starting rotations in baseball, if not the best. And then yeah, solid lineup and
Yeah,
maybe not the most complete bullpen, but one of the best closers. Which, you know, he's gonna play more of a role in the postseason than he would the uh the regular season, as you know, there's more days off in the playoffs. He's probably gonna throw a higher percentage of bullpen innings than he would in the regular season. So yeah,
yeah.
he'll be more of a factor for that postseason. Um, so yeah, anything more before we get into the final trade?
No, let's talk Mason Miller and Leo DeVries and JP Sears.
Yes, all those pieces moving along. Yeah, what was your first takeaway from this?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I think it started, on Wednesday night. I was watching the A's game in Sacramento. They were leading by 2 in the ninth, and I noticed that Mason Miller wasn't in the game. And I checked back at the game logs and noticed that he hadn't pitched since Saturday. And I thought, okay, either he's like sick or something is going down. And the immediate quote that came out from Mark Kotze after the game was, "He's unavailable, and that's all I can tell you." Which to me that signaled, okay, it's got to be Padres, it's got to be Leo DeVries. Like that's I don't know what else it would have been. And that's exactly what it is. Obviously, we found out the next morning that it was official. Yeah, this is probably the most stunning trade. I would even argue that happened. I know that the Correa one was definitely more unexpected, but uh, I mean, what 4 years of control I think it is that Mason Miller has left. The Padres already have perhaps the best bullpen in the league. Um, Like, and they just went for it here. Yeah, 4 years of control after this one. He's a super two. He's got 4 years of ARB coming up.
Yeah, I think this deal has the greatest potential of ripple effect for the
Yep,
league in general. Um,
100%.
yeah, considering the package that was delivered, mostly Leo DeVries, and the status he brings
Leodonis.
to potentially to the A's. But yeah, like, the Carlos Correa deal obviously makes an impact, but like, he's, it can't be too lopsided because the Astros have to pay him all that money. The other deals are not as much control is going on. Like, yeah, Eugenio Suarez, whatever impact he's going to have with the Mariners is going to be for 2 months. This, Mason Miller is going to be with the Padres for 4.5 years. I mean, obviously, unless he gets traded. And then Leo DeVries has his time in the minors plus 6 years of control with the A's. So there's a lot of potential impact that can happen on either side here. That's what makes it such a huge splash and such a shocker to the baseball world. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to see what happens. I'm into it on both sides, kind of. Maybe the Padres could have stood being more patient with Leo DeVries, but like, Mason Miller's a damn good reliever, that's for sure. And not all prospects work out, so could work out for them too. So yeah, I'm
100%.
I'm excited to see how this plays out but yeah, we could really see this as having a crazy ripple effect, and that could be one-sided or great for both sides. It could really make a different types of impacts.
And just to give you some context on the magnitude of Leo DeVries, a prospect getting traded, MLB Pipeline has him number 3 on their overall list. Since 2004, when MLB Pipeline began tracking prospects, it is just the 5th time in which a top 3 prospect was traded. The other ones, Yoan Moncada in the Chris Sale trade from the Red Sox going from the Red Sox to the White Sox, Cameron Maybin in the Miguel Cabrera trade, Will Myers in the trade from Kansas City to Tampa for Wade Davis and James Shields, Lucas Giolito in the Adam Eaton trade from the Nationals to the White Sox, and then DeVries. So you're looking at, like, rankings wise, he's the best prospect to be traded since 2016, almost a decade. And I would imagine out of these 5, he was probably the youngest to have been traded, right? That would be my guess. I don't know exactly how old Cameron Maybin was, but I'm guessing he was probably older than 18.
Yeah,
Moncada
especially
was pretty
he's
young
American,
too.
so
Moncada was pretty young too, but I don't think he was that young.
yeah, no, I mean the fact that he had already been in the majors,
Yeah.
he was probably
Oh
20,
yeah,
I
dude. He
think.
was he was 22.
Oh
Going
wow,
he was going at age 22, I should say. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah, this is in a way kind of unprecedented for an 18-year-old with this much notoriety to be traded. And for a reliever. Like, yes, Mason Miller is a great reliever. He's one of the best in baseball, and he's also very controllable. Still, when you talk about the magnitude of the prospect that you just traded, you probably weren't thinking Mason Miller was the returning piece. You probably thought it was someone that's a position player, a starter, someone that can make more of an impact throughout a season. Just pure, let's just say war wise. I know that's not what people love, but I mean, that's what front offices would typically look at, but not AJ Preller. And I respect it. I do wholeheartedly respect that. Time after time, he has traded prospect after prospect that has turned out to be excellent. And it's not even like I don't even think it's a matter of not learning his lesson. I think it's just like, yeah, I will do it again because I really like Mason Miller. Because look at
yeah,
that, he was 104. you know?
yeah, and there's like, although he lost the first Juan Soto trade, he got a decent return when he traded Juan Soto off. That can be the same situation
Yeah.
with Mason Miller.
Yep,
Um,
exactly.
he could be, a 1 year rental for another team, 3 or 4 years down the line.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's a interesting, dangerous game he plays, but Padres are somewhat succeeding. They've been in the
The
playoffs.
A's have a lot of very fun, controllable pieces. Uh,
Yeah,
like, all right, let's see. They got Brent Rooker under contract till at least 2029. They have Lawrence Butler under contract till at least 2031. They have Shea Langoliers till 2028. They have JJ Bleday till 2028. They have Nick Kurtz until 2031. And now they have 18-year-old Leo DeVries. And they also have Jacob Wilson till 2030. Like this, they need pitching, obviously, but like if all of these guys can maintain what they have going, like this has the potential to be one of the most fun teams. And like, you think of the A's and you think if they keep trading all of these guys, like, I could be totally wrong for saying this. This will 100% be an old takes exposed moment. They really don't have to trade any of their good names for a while.
True.
No,
Yeah.
they don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Unless they want to get big
Excellent.
returns on people because they don't think in 2029 that they'll be good in the year 2026. Like
Right.
they don't have to do this to their fans for some time. You know, ultimately, unfortunately, like I still don't think with the conditions in Sacramento that they really ever will be good there. Like the pitching is just not meant to sustain itself there. It's literally a PCL ballpark with major league hitters.
Right.
Like that's not, like they need to hit a lot to overcome that over the next few years. I know they broke ground on the Vegas ballpark this year. We will see what happens. There's still, I think, a lot in the air. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother ordeal.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, trying to think of like a top prospect who's that young, and that valuable. Like you have to go back to Jackson Chorio. Like this is like if
Mhm.
Jackson Chorio was traded, maybe like in 2021-ish,
Yeah.
around that time. Um, like that's kind of the magnitude we're talking about. I remember when Chorio had the hype around him,
Mhm.
when his prospect ranking just kept skyrocketing. But
I would say the A's hope to see him up in 2027, but the A's are also probably not opposed to just not having a 2027. So who knows?
yeah, 2027 is just in question
Yeah.
for baseball.
I saw it. That was funny where like, they announced that Wrigley was going to host the 2027 All-Star game. Everything I saw on Twitter was like, okay, 2027 All-Star game. Yeah, sure. Yeah, 1994 World Series, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Me getting my 1904 World Series tickets
Yeah.
when the Giants wimped out.
I think in like 2 years, I'm gonna post like an AI image on like Boomer Facebook being like, this 130-year-old man was at the 1904 World Series and the 2027 All-Star game.
That's pretty good. I like that concept.
Yeah, see if I can get anyone to fall for it.
Yeah, right, exactly. I
A
always love the
130-year-old man at Wrigley Field.
I always love the talk of like the 140-year-old person. And it's like it's always from a questionable country. It's like, I don't know if you're tracking. And is
Yeah,
that
right.
great? It's like, yeah, okay.
I mean,
Maybe
I'm
in
just saying, like, the world's oldest person just keeps dying. Happens all the time. Like, you got to question,
it
like, what's
is
the deal there?
it is a curse. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
like there's no repeat rookie of the year winners.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Never never
I
one.
see. Anytime I see a headline on Twitter being like, world's oldest person dies at 120 years old, there's always a reply being like, this keeps happening. What's going on? What are they doing to these people?
Good. It's a valid question.
Yeah. I mean, that's the third time this year, third time this week, even.
Yeah, no, it's wild. It's wild.
How
Um,
can
but
what happens if the second you turn 115, do they just like what do they do to you?
right, I don't know what's going on there. It's just it seems the survival rate for 118-year-olds is
Were
low.
they vaxxed?
I think it was that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's their high fructose corn syrup consumption. I think that's what's going on.
Yeah,
It's the
there's something
modern
in that. There's something in the grains there.
I think cane sugar would be a valuable asset to them instead of the high
Yeah.
fructose corn syrup. Um, but uh, but yeah, want to get into players to highlight?
Let's do it.
All right. Well,
Woo.
just like the just like the fate of the 122-year-old is slightly alarming. We are going to be talking about some slightly alarming players as we're going to start with our Sunday, August 3rd, 2025 edition of Slightly Alarming Statistics. He's been barreling up the ball way less.
He's not missing bats, he's not getting the ball on the ground, and people are hitting it in the air more.
It's been so bad. He is getting a
Slightly alarming.
Yes, so for my slightly alarming, this is a guy that did homer today and did go 3 for 4 yesterday. But I'm still doing it. You and I both put him on our top 50s. In fact, we had him number 1 positionally and number 5 overall. I'm talking about Francisco Lindor, who has had a rough stretch for the Mets. Since July 13th, the day before the All-Star break, he is slashing 179, 214, 269 for a 483 OPS. He has a 36 weighted runs created plus and a minus 0.2 F-WAR despite his defense and base running. Among the 183 qualifiers in the span, he ranks 7th lowest in OBP, 15th lowest in slugging, 8th lowest in OPS, and 8th lowest in weighted runs created plus, arguably a bottom 10 qualified hitter in the league. His strikeout rate has gone from 17.4% before the span to 28.6% in the span. It is a 12% increase. And his walk rate has gone from 7.7% to just 2.9%, almost a 5% decrease in walk rate. Naturally, because his strikeout rate is way up and his walk rate is way down, his swing decisions have not exactly been ideal. He has gone from swinging at 4.1% of the pitches in the waste zone, which means they are waste pitches, to swinging at those pitches 14% of the time. That is over a 10% increase in swing or in chase rate on pitches that are way outside. His pop-up rate has gone from 7.8% before the span to 12.8 in this span, a 5% increase in the worst kind of batted ball you can have. And even worse, that is taken from his line drive rate, which has gone from 23.7% to 17%. You're essentially taking 5% of what is a 600 batting average and replacing it with 5% of a 0 batting average is what he's done. He's gone from barreling 28.2% of his fly balls before the span to just 14.3% in the span. It has been slashed in half. And also, only one of his 14 fly balls in the span has exceeded 100 miles per hour. That gives him a 7.1% rate, and it is the tied for the 13th lowest among the 141 hitters with at least 10 fly balls hit in the span. And finally, among the 176 hitters with at least 50 plate appearances throughout the span, he ranks second lowest in batting average with a 170, in expected batting average with a 172, seventh lowest in expected slugging with a 271, and dead last in expected WOBA at 213. So even with the underlying numbers, Lindor has been one of the worst hitters in the league. He is striking out a lot more. He's making much worse contact. And for that reason, he is getting a slightly alarming.
Yes, Francisco Lindor.
Slightly alarming.
I've been feeling it. He's not been a great hitter. A lot of 0 for days. Although it seems like he's turning it around, but still, just looking at the mass scale for most of July, it was not looking great. My slightly alarming is a player. He definitely got there were definitely a lot of people excited about him heading into this year. Was one of the best players in baseball in the last half of last year. Talking about Lawrence Butler of the Athletics. In his last 19 games, he is hitting 129 with a 422 OPS out of 186 qualified hitters in this span heading into Sunday. Butler had the 5th lowest average, 6th lowest on base percentage, 6th lowest slugging percentage, and 4th lowest OPS. Out of 153 hitters to see 250 plus pitches in the span heading into Sunday. Butler had the 9th lowest expected slugging and 13th lowest expected WOBA. Part of this has to do with him making less contact. His strikeout rate has gone from 27% to 35%. And out of 186 qualified hitters, his strikeout rate is the 5th highest in this span. His whiff rate has also gone from 32% before the span to 41% in this span. And out of 153 hitters, his whiff rate was 2nd highest in this span. He has also hit the ball much less or much softer. His average exit velocity has gone from 90.9 miles per hour to 85.0 miles per hour. And out of 153 hitters, his average exit velocity was the 19th lowest. His fly ball rate had also gone from 24% before the span to 15% in this span. And out of 195 hitters with 40 plus batted balls, his fly ball rate was 13th lowest. And out of the 7 fly balls that he has hit, only 1 has been pulled. So that's 14%, not a great rate. So yeah, Lawrence Butler striking out more, hitting less fly balls, hitting the ball much softer, and that has resulted in him being pretty much a bottom 5 hitter over his last 19 games, and he is getting A.
Slightly alarming.
All right, and now we move from the lows to the highs, where we were talking players or subjects that have been outperforming expectations with our Sunday, August 3rd, 2025 edition of How About That?
He's striking out less, walking more, and he's also making better contact.
Turning into a strikeout machine just out of nowhere.
He's been excellent all around this year.
And he is getting a...
How about that?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of ace talk on this pod. We obviously spent a lot of time on them trading their closer for the number 3 prospect in baseball. Chris just highlighted their right fielder on Slightly Alarming, and I'm highlighting their catcher on How About That? Talking about Shea Langoliers, who has been, although he's not the best hitter on his team, he's been one of the best in the sport throughout the second half. He is slashing 407, 438, 864 for a 1302 OPS, 251 weighted runs created plus, and a 1.4 FWAR. Among the 185 qualifiers in this span, Langoliers ranks 4th in batting average, tied for 10th in on-base percentage, 2nd in slugging, 2nd in OPS, 2nd in weighted runs created plus, and 2nd in FWAR. All of those he trails only Nick Kurtz, his teammate. So it's a couple of A's on top of all the big power leaderboards over the second half. His average bat speed has gone from 72.7 miles per hour before the span to 74.1 miles per hour in this span. So it looks like the brief break that he got during the All-Star break has helped him rest a little bit, and maybe this is a result of that, seeing the average bat speed go up. And that adjustment has allowed him to get ahead of the ball and lift it a lot more. His ground ball rate has gone from 42.8% before the span to just 32% in this span. It's a 10% decrease. And those ground balls are going to line drives. It has gone from a 22.7% line drive rate to a 32% line drive rate. His line drive rate and ground ball rate have actually been equal in this span, which is fantastic. He has also gone from pulling 35.6% of his his batted balls before the span to 42% in the span, and his pull rate on fly balls has gone from 30.9% to 50%, tied for the 6th highest among the 122 hitters with at least 10 fly balls hit in this span. Langoliers has interestingly seen a steadier dose of breaking balls and off-speed pitches in the span. He went from seeing 43.6% breaking balls and off-speed before the span in the first half to 46.9% in the second half. It's a little over a 3% increase. And it's not necessarily the increase. It definitely has a part to play in it, but it's what he's doing against those pitches. He is hitting 448 and slugging 1,000 against all breaking balls and off-speed pitches. Among the 99 hitters with at least 25 plate appearances ending on such pitches, he ranks 2nd in average and 1st in slugging. And also he ranks 1st in run value per 100 at 29.4. The next closest is 21.9. So he has been far and away the best breaking ball and off-speed hitter in baseball throughout the second half. And he's interestingly seeing more of them in this span. So Shea Langoliers been hitting very well recently, and he is getting a How About That?
Yes, Shea Langoliers.
How about that?
Yeah, I feel like he might have been a How About That last year too.
Sounds right.
At some
I
point.
thought we were crossing them off the list, but you did Tyler Soderstrom earlier this year.
Right.
There are 6 teams left on the list, maybe 5 if you have one of them here.
I believe I'm crossing a team off the list here, talking about a Dodger.
Yeah.
So yeah, a Dodger, and it's hard to talk about Dodgers, so it makes sense that today we are reliever diving.
Yep.
And I'm talking about Alex Vesia. out of that Dodger bullpen. He actually had a scoreless appearance today. So in his last 25 appearances, including today, he has a 1.25 ERA in 21 and 2/3 innings pitched. And in his previous 24 appearances heading into Sunday, his FIP was 1.36. And out of 189 qualified relievers in this span heading into Sunday, his ERA ranked 15th and FIP ranked 4th. And out of 340 pitchers to throw 300 plus pitches heading in, or excuse me, out of 340 total pitchers to throw 300 plus pitches in this span heading into Sunday, his expected batting average against was third lowest, expected WOBA against was third lowest, and expected slugging against was second lowest. Part of this has to do with him having a little bit more control. His walk rate has gone from 9.2% before the span to 5.4% in this span. And his strikeout minus walk rate in this span is 31%, which ranks 5th out of 189. But largely what has come from this is the lack of home runs that he has allowed. His home run rate has gone from 7.1% before the span to 0% in this span. Part of this has to do with him allowing much less fly balls. His fly ball rate has gone from 40% to 20%. He has cut that fly ball rate against in half. Partially because of this, his barrel rate against has gone from 18.9% to 4.9%. And his rate of batted balls being pulled barrels has gone from 13% to 0%. Not only has he not allowed a home run, but he has not allowed a pulled barrel in this span. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand. Also, his general average exit velocity has gone from 88.3 miles per hour to 85.7 miles per hour. And despite him cutting his fly ball rate by quite a bit, his pop-up rate has actually gone from an already elite 19% to 24%. His pop-up rate, I mentioned that fly ball rate right now is 20%. His pop-up rate against is above his fly ball rate, which is pretty crazy to realize. Like, seeing that in a span is a huge anomaly, considering that the average fly ball rate is usually around 25% and the average pop-up rate is around 7 or 8%. The fact that he has allowed more pop-ups than fly balls in this span is actually pretty crazy. And that is a great recipe for success, and part of the reason why he has a 1.31 ERA and 1.25 ERA and a FIP below 1.5 in this span. And out of 470 pitchers to allow 25 plus batted balls in this span, Alex Vesia has the highest pop-up rate. So yeah, he's been
that's what he does. Yeah.
Yeah, he does that. And he's been one of the most effective relievers in baseball since basically the start of June. And Alex Vesia is getting A.
How about that?
All
I
right.
would love to go back to like the 1930s and explain to people like in the stands at the Philadelphia A's games that Lefty Grove hasn't given up a pulled barrel in like 3 months, but refusing to elaborate on what that is.
Are you talking about a trash barrel, C?
No, a pulled barrel. He hasn't given up a pulled barrel in 3 months.
Why would you want to pull that barrel out of the ground?
It's why he's one of the best pitchers. Well, actually, he's really the only good pitcher.
Yeah.
Nobody has pulled any barrels against him.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to talk about for sure.
But I'm not going to elaborate.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, no, his meatball rate is pretty low. Like, what is he not holding up his
I feel like that would actually make sense, because meatball is such a slang term that I feel like I don't know, maybe it just did exist in the 1930s.
Yeah, I guess maybe sword.
Yeah, sword.
But people
He's got a lot of swords.
People might have actually owned swords.
No, he owns guns. He's a hunter. It's not swords. We've moved past that. It's not the 16th century? No, it's the early 20th century.
Right.
No, we don't use swords. We use rifles and bows.
What's this chap talking to me about?
We use muskets.
Yeah.
To find our dinner every night.
Yeah, that is a conversation. Yeah, we haven't really thought about that enough, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, any final words before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I mean, this was a very long one. I feel like we covered everything we needed to.
Yeah, we really
There was
did.
a lot to cover.
Yeah, probably the longest regular season episode we'll have.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's for sure. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's trade deadline. A lot more happened than we expected. So yeah, that's just
Yeah.
kind of what we had to do.
Dude, up
Um,
until like July 30th, it was brutal. No one was doing anything.
yeah, exactly. And there
I do
wasn't.
kind of appreciate that like people treat the trade deadline as a deadline. Like you never had like once or twice a year you have a team being like, "Oh, I can actually make a trade on June 27th if I really feel like I need to."
Right. Yeah,
I'm allowed to do that. There's nothing I don't have to do it on July 31st at 5:50 p.m. when things might cost more.
yeah, it brings me back to 2018 when Machado was on the last year of control with the Orioles, and like the Orioles were very clearly not in a playoff race, but still nothing happened until July.
Well, the Orioles traded him at the All-Star break, did they not?
I think it was around the All-Star break, but I
Yeah,
remember
so they didn't wait.
yeah,
I mean,
but
they didn't really
they,
get anything either.
they should have traded him in
They
like
got,
May.
I think, Dean Creamer in that trade.
Yeah, that was the main one.
Honestly, I mean, what if they gotten out of Dean Creamer? Seven F4? I think that outweighs 2 months of Manny Machado.
Yeah, he did not get 7 F4 with the Dodgers.
No. Yeah, so
That's
I
for
mean,
sure.
Orioles winners of the Manny Machado trade. Congratulations.
Yeah, good for them. Um, but yeah, like they could have done that in May and they just didn't. But yeah, I remember Machado was an all-star as an Oriole.
Yeah.
So
Well, he was their all-star.
yeah,
But he
right.
also started, I think, right?
I think so. Yeah. Memorable all-star game, that 2018
Yep.
one.
Nats
Um,
Park.
Nats Park, that's the main reason for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that shall do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you were listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel. It's called Above Replacement Radio. Feel free to check out the guest interviews playlist. We've had Matt Brash on the program from the Seattle Mariners. We've had Jeff Passan, who obviously had all the breaking news this past deadline. We've had Chris Rose, Sarah Langs, Mike Petriello, Foolish Bailey, Mark Simon 4 times, among many others. So feel free to check out that playlist. Feel free to check out the video essays on the channel. Most recently, why there's no GOAT debate in baseball. People have their opinions on that for sure. But feel free to check that one out if you haven't already. And also follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball. Once again, see you then.
This conversation is over.